People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Rishi Sunak stakes his political future on ending the Channel crisis as he unveils a 5-point migrant plan.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Dorgan. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
The Prime Minister says migrants who try to reach the country illegally will be banned from claiming asylum. Unveiling a new plan to tackle small boat crossings, he pledged to abolish the backlog of over 90,000 asylum claims by the end of next year.
And the government will hold another Cobra meeting today to discuss mitigating the effects of strikes as Royal Mail workers join the wave of walkouts. Rail strikes also continue today, bringing train services to a grinding halt across the country.
In the football, Argentina made it to the World Cup final after a decisive 3-0 victory over Croatia last night. The team, led by Lionel Messi, will now face either France or Morocco in the final on Sunday.
And some welcome cheer as the Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card image, which shows the couple holding hands with their 3 children on a rather sunny day in Norfolk.
It doesn't look too festive, but they are an absolutely model family, aren't they? Absolutely gorgeous. Get in touch. Let us know your thoughts about all of the topics of the day. gbviews@gbnews.uk, and let us know where you're watching or listening from. So our top story this hour, Rishi Sunak has vowed to end the Channel migrant crisis, saying those who enter the country illegally will be barred from claiming asylum.
Well, the comments came after he unveiled a new 5-point plan to tackle illegal immigration that includes an end to housing migrants in hotels and the reclassifying of Albania as a safe country, meaning the majority of asylum seekers from there will be sent back.
Well, writing in the Telegraph today, the Prime Minister says people are right to be angry, and he pledged to act decisively to avoid the situation getting worse.
Well, joining us now is Dan Falvey, Deputy Digital Politics Editor of the Daily Express. Good morning. So we've seen a lot of this before, Dan. We've heard tough talk from David Cameron, from Priti Patel. Will this work? Will it wash with the electorate? Because they need some good news, don't they?
I'm not sure this is... it'll be welcome, what was said yesterday, but the question is, can he actually deliver on it? Because, as you said, we've heard this before. If we go back to Brexit, part of Brexit was take back control. And what we saw was, since then, small boat crossings have continued to rise.
Yeah.
We then saw Priti Patel last year unveiled the Nationality and Borders Bill. This was going to end illegal immigration. Small boat crossings have continued to rise. Rwanda, as a policy, was unveiled. This was going to allow us to get rid of people who arrived illegally. Small boat crossings have continued to rise. We've now got a new plan again, and let's see, because so far, every time they've announced plans which are going to clamp down on this, small boat crossings have continued to rise.
Yeah, of course, let's see. But I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that Rishi Sunak knows that not only the future of his role as Prime Minister, but the future of his party in government rests on this. The very fact that at a time when you look across the papers and the number of issues facing the country at the moment, that 7 weeks into his premiership, he's nearly focusing all his attention on this particular policy, just goes to show how seriously he's taking it.
Yeah, and polling shows this is the second biggest issue that voters, Conservative voters in particular, care about after the cost of living crisis. So he knows that doing something about this really does matter to them. The danger is, though, the more you bang on about it, the more you make people aware of the problem, and the more you bang on about it, the more people want answers. And if you can't deliver that, you'd be better keeping quiet, quite frankly.
In terms of some of the detail, making Albania a safe country, well, that's only in compliance with the rest of the European Union, so there's no great shakes there. Doubling the number of asylum workers, well, won't that be a pull factor? And finally, there's already been a revolt within the Tory ranks because they're calling it this Pontins, putting them into coastal towns, into holiday towns, to try and get away from £6 million a day on hotels. But they're still being dumped in areas that voted against this, aren't they?
Yeah, and again, it comes down to you want to solve the problem. He wants to fix the problem. He's putting a lot of his own personal energy and time into this. But it's going to come down to what do the public think on it. And when the public looking and reading their newspapers and they hear that, for example, they're not going to hotels, we're going to send them to former holiday parks, I'm not sure the public are going to go, that's what we wanted.
Well, they spend a lot of money to go to those holiday parks.
Exactly. I think they're going to be just as frustrated. So, look, if he manages to make a difference, if we see the number of small boats reduced, if we see the asylum backlog cleared, and this is cleared up in the problem by the next election, it'll all work out for Rishi Sunak, but it's a big gamble.
It is a big gamble, and I just want to sort of look at some of the political reaction to it yesterday, with the Labour Party saying that this was just gimmicks.
Yeah.
The Lib Dems were condemnatory. They were saying that, you know, that this is taking away what the Conservatives call human rights loopholes, but they said that they're there for a valuable reason. And to be fair, those sentiments were echoed by former Prime Minister Theresa May, who introduced the slavery laws, who urged caution in the potential sweeping away of them, that you lose a lot of the refuge and sanctuary that you give to people who are victims of horrendous crimes.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing in a number of issues at the moment in the Conservative Party is there is a lack of unity. There are those in the Conservative Party on this issue who think that this is just rhetoric and doesn't go far enough and want to see proper action and fear that this is going to just lead to nothing. There are those like Theresa May in the Conservative Party who fear that this is, for the sake of some sound bites, actually undoing very necessary laws. And trying to hold that together as a party over this issue is going to be very difficult for the next couple of years. And we're seeing that with a number of issues. There's permanent... Rishi Sunak has come in to number 10. There's just revolts left, right and centre on every issue.
You know, some might say that Theresa May's Brexit trouble got the Tories into the mess in 2019 and Theresa May's modern slavery laws are getting them into trouble now. A poll came out yesterday, Dan, a 314 majority for Labour, including Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, losing their seats. Can they possibly salvage victory from the jaws of defeat, or do you think this is curtains for the Tories?
It certainly looks like it's going to be very difficult for the Conservatives to win a next election. But what they do have is potentially complacency from the Labour Party. Labour seem at the moment very confident. They feel like they're a government in waiting. They're making announcements as if they're a government in waiting. Keir Starmer has a spring in his step when he's making these announcements, but they're not focusing, I think, on a lot of the issues that really matter to the public. We've seen them go on private schools. We've seen them go on House of Lords reform. What we've not actually heard is what would they do about the economy? What would they do about strikes? The major issues that actually are affecting people right now, Labour's silent on. And that's, you know, they're picking up on their own bits left, right and centre, I think, because they think we've got this election in the bag.
Yeah, we've got the latest inflation figures coming out at 7 o'clock this morning, and we will be hearing from the Shadow Cabinet. Emily Thornberry, who is Shadow Attorney General, will be giving her assessment of that. But I want to turn our attention now to the strikes. As Martin was saying earlier, we've got the second day of the rail strikes, we've got the postal strikes today, we've got the threat of the nursing strike tomorrow, second COBRA meeting happening today. But we had Mark Harper on yesterday morning, who was saying that the public mood was turning in favour of the government in this, that the government was being incredibly reasonable. And when it comes to nurses, very interesting, a letter being co-signed by the chief nursing officers of Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland, all condemning the RCN's actions, saying that lives will be lost. Do you think that could be a turning point in the nurses' negotiations?
So I think there's 2 points. I think Mark Harper's right. I think the public are getting increasingly frustrated with the way this is going, and they think that some of this is unreasonable, particularly when it's coming to Christmas. They're looking at, for example, the rail strikes and the postal strikes, which are really going to impact people's festive times. Let's not forget the last 2 years we've had COVID, which have interrupted Christmas, and there's now potentially a third year where Christmas is going to be interrupted. So, without doubt, people are frustrated and the mood is turning on that. But I think equally the government shouldn't think that means that people are now in favour of them. There's also a lot of anger and frustration, I think, amongst the public about why is the government letting this happen? At the 2019 election, the Conservatives promised to pass legislation to stop rail strikes happening the way they did. They're going to have this minimal service level legislation that meant that some trains had to run. That's not passed. And I think the public are equally frustrated about why are we in this situation? Why have our ministers, why has our government not protected from this before? So I think there's anger from the public on both sides with this.
Quickly, Dan, the Daily Express, your paper, is almost the kind of beating. You take the temperature of what the mood is within Conservative land. What are your readers telling us? Are they keeping the faith? Are they hopeful this Christmas? Or are they sort of, bracing themselves for this winter of discontent and they're losing the faith?
They're frustrated. They just feel like they don't really see that there's an end in sight to this. They don't really feel like this is going to make the difference. And they feel frustrated about the government all round, really, in many ways. They are Conservatives, but I think what they heard yesterday with the asylum plan, they thought, we've heard this before, we want more. I think with strikes, again, it's like, what's the government going to do to help us then? We want more. They just want more at the moment. I think they're just frustrated about the situation all round.
Superb. Dan, thank you very much. See you again in the next hour. Cheers.
Well, as we were discussing just then, Royal Mail workers begin striking again today, joining the wave of winter walkouts.
And now, in the days running up to Christmas, one group of people being particularly affected by these strikes are small businesses who rely on delivery services.
Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper spoke to the owner of a handmade clothing brand to see how they're being impacted.
Being a small business owner and making my clothes handmade to order, it means my production time in itself is longer than usual. I've had to move my final order date a lot sooner than usual, meaning essentially I'm going to have less orders, less profit and less money to invest into my new collections next year. If I'm going to stick with Royal Mail, I just need them to stop striking, just so that I have a reliable courier service and I can make sure that my customers are getting their orders on time and I'm not worrying once they've left me if they're actually going to get to them on time. If the customer doesn't get their parcel on time, I worry that they won't order from me again because they'll think that potentially it was my fault. And for me, as a small business, trust and customer relationships are one of the most important things that help my business.
Yeah, tough times. Just an awful time of year for those mail strikes. We'll be going through the papers today with David Mellor and Amy Cameron in around half an hour's time. But before we get to it, I just wanted to show you this picture, which is on the front of the Telegraph this morning. It is a fox, and reportedly there are rats as well, gnawing away in a mountain of Christmas mail waiting to be delivered. Bit off-putting, isn't it, to think of the post as it comes through your letterbox having been fingered by little furry paws.
And that's in Bristol, but I think that's going to start happening nationwide over the next couple of days. And that really reminds me, I'm old enough to remember the first winter of discontent when the garbage piled up on the streets, and it's starting to feel echoes of those days again.
Yeah, it really is. And as you said, talking about the Express, the front page for them is, can we have our country back? And
it'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Lots of people saying it does feel a bit like a lockdown at the moment. Anyway, it's 11 minutes past 6. We want to bring you up to date now with the top stories this hour.
Thousands of people have been left without power as snow and ice continue to hit parts of the UK. It comes as the Scottish Government has declared a major incident for Shetland yesterday after almost 3,000 homes lost their electricity. Meanwhile, the Met Office has extended a yellow warning for snow and ice in northern Scotland and north-east England until Friday.
We would love to hear from you if you've been affected by that and you are in Scotland today. Do get in touch with us. Top Gear presenter Andrew Freddie Flintoff's in hospital. He was involved in a crash filming for the show yesterday morning. It happened at the Top Gear test track in Surrey. The Sun's reporting that the former professional cricketer was airlifted to hospital, but is not thought to have suffered any life-threatening injuries. We do send him our best wishes.
Get well soon, Freddie. And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card. For our radio listeners, the image shows William and Kate walking along a path in Norfolk, hand in hand, with their gorgeous children.
Absolutely.
Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. The King and Queen consorts released their Christmas card last weekend, and that was also fabulous, wasn't it?
It was. Anyone who watches the programme regularly will know I'm a huge fan of the Waleses. You can't fail to be seduced by them. They're picture perfect. They're so... they never put a foot wrong, do they?
What was that phrase you said earlier? Long-limbed...
Long-limbed,
Levacious.
languid. I can't quite think what... Yes, they are. They're long-limbed and gorgeous. However, controversially... I'm not sure, A, about the practice of putting a picture of yourself on a Christmas card.
Right.
I much prefer a festive scene. But also, it's the middle of summer. It's just like their summer holiday snap.
Yeah.
Last year it was Jordan, wasn't it? They were crouching in a cave in Wadi Rum. This year, Norfolk. Look, lovely photograph, no denying it. And as I say, long-limbed and languid. But is it Christmassy?
Yeah, I think it brings a nice bit of festive cheer. You know, it warms us up in these dark times. You know, Lord knows, with the news at the moment, I think we need a bit of warming up.
I suppose it's a big signal to Meghan that this is not just a formal family, as she claims.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us know what you think about the Christmas cards, or indeed share your Christmas family snaps with us. Why not?
Indeed. So still to come, as strikes and extreme weather bring travel chaos back to airports. We'll find out which one is worse when it comes to accessibility for the disabled. But first, here's the important weather.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Some of you waking up to a covering of snow in places. It's a frosty, icy start again, and we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Here's the big picture: low pressure to the north and to the southwest. This one is trying to introduce milder air, but it's not really succeeding. We stay in the cold air for at least the next couple of days. A couple of weather fronts enhancing the snow showers. Northern Scotland, down across parts of eastern England. We saw some wet weather overnight across the southwest. Bit of snow in places here and potentially quite icy first thing this morning. Ice is a risk wherever we've had showers through the course of the night. But for most, it's just going to be a fine, crisp, cold winter's day, with temperatures just about getting above freezing for most of us, 2 or 3 the high. Feeling colder in the wind along the south coast and across northern Scotland, where the snow showers will continue on and off through the day, through the night, and indeed for most of tomorrow. We'll see a few more of these snow showers coming across parts of eastern England again overnight, potentially therefore turning things icy, and that is also a risk across Northern Ireland. The wet weather in the south just about staying away from the south coast, but could bring further rain to parts of the Channel Isles. Again, most places just clear overnight, and therefore it will be another very cold start to the morning. Again, you'll be scraping the car windscreen once more. But again, for most, tomorrow will be another bright, crisp, frosty winter's day with plenty of sunshine. But there will be more sleet and snow showers across northeastern parts of England and across northern Scotland, the odd one too for Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, again, generally just fine and sunny with temperatures still below average, 2 or 3 degrees at best, and feeling colder in that wind, which will be strong at times along the far north and the east coast. Another cold one on Friday, but changes on the way. Turning wetter through this weekend. That could bring some snow for a time, but then it is going to turn milder. Bye for now.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Breakfast. It's 6:18 and still to come on today's programme.
At 6:45, we'll be speaking to the former Minister for Immigration, Damien Green, as the Prime Minister unveils his new plan to end the Channel crisis.
And at 7:45, as the second day of rail strikes begin, we'll speak to a restaurant owner who's lost thousands of pounds due to the walkouts. So there's a massive issue for the hospitality industry.
It does feel like lockdown, doesn't it, for a lot of those in the industry. Look, we want to hear your views this morning. Lots of you, despite the early hour, already getting in touch. John's emailed in, that's no British holidays for British families till the end of next year then, because all the accommodation will be taken up with Channel migrants. This is the so-called Pontins plan.
Yeah, and there's lots
don't
of...
seem too impressed with that.
Lots of people getting really upset about that. I mean, that's where a lot of British people will go for their holidays. Now they're being treated as a sort of second-class dumping ground for Albanians, and that's sticking in the craw. Stuart is adding to that. With all the hotels and now holiday camps filling up with people that have entered the country illegally, how are UK citizens going to get on holiday in the UK next summer?
Yeah, and this on the strikes. John's got in touch to say Royal Mail are going on strike at the busiest time of the year and the most profitable month, where people have moved on to emails and small companies relied on them to deliver their parcels or having to refund customers. They're not doing themselves a favour. And that's certainly the view a lot of people say who use the trains, and indeed Royal Mail will just never use them again.
I also wonder if this is driving people just to be even more reliant on Amazon.
Yes,
who have their own deliveries,
couriers,
breaking that cycle with the Royal Mail.
Yeah. Keep those thoughts coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Well, amid the travel chaos caused by strikes and extreme weather, the Civil Aviation Authority has named Luton Airport as the UK's worst for disabled passengers.
Well, the regulator found the airport to be the worst performer after it failed to hit targets for accessibility. Here to tell us more is James Taylor, Director of Strategy at Scope. A very good morning to you and a warm welcome to you. Oh dear, Luton will not be pleased with this. Named and shamed by the Civil Aviation Authority. What specifically did they fall down on?
Well, named and shamed, I think, for the fourth year in a row. Particularly fallen down on the amount of time people are waiting on a plane to disembark, not being able to access support and assistance going around the airport when they arrive. I think it's worth noting that this year, the Aviation Authority have listed 6 airports as being very good. 3 years ago, it was 19.
Oh, really?
So a lot of performance has dropped. The summer was really difficult, if we can think back to then, how hard it was to fly, but for disabled passengers, it was even harder. There were stories of people stuck on planes for hours and hours and hours. Unfortunately, one man died because the assistant didn't turn up.
Well, you were talking about the situation 3 years ago. That was pre-pandemic. It's been well documented, hasn't it, the terrible impact of the pandemic on the airlines. Is this just a symptom, really, of an ailing industry? They've got staff shortages, huge problems with baggage handling, and the people who are suffering are those with disabilities?
Yeah, possibly. I think it's also potentially an attitude that disabled passengers are treated less equally and perhaps less of a priority to airports. And we're seeing many disabled people choosing not to fly or go on holiday now because of the experiences they've had in the past.
And in terms of where's a good place, you mentioned there are 3 good places. I mean, often you can't work around this, can you? Because you tend to go to Luton because they offer the cheap, the cheap short hauls to places in Europe. But where is good? And where would you recommend people go to if they have a disability?
I think there are 3 airports around the world that are really good. Miami, Tokyo and Bologna. Those are the 3 best airports
what about from
in
Britain?
the world for accessibility.
Where's the best place to leave from Britain?
From Britain, the CAA said Liverpool and East Midlands are the top 2 who've performed extremely highly throughout the year.
That's really interesting, because my next question was going to be, is it actually the smaller airports like Luton who are struggling the most to provide adequate provision here? Clearly not.
No, I think some of the smaller airports up into the north of the country are much better. It's the bigger ones, Gatwick and Heathrow, who've tended to be poor. They've had some improvement, but the bigger ones tend to be worse in this country.
What are they getting right? I'm really happy to... That's where I'm from, the East Midlands. What are they getting right up there and in Liverpool? What can other airports learn from them?
Well, it's when a disabled person turns up at the airport, assistance is there within 15 to 20 minutes, whereas at Heathrow you might be waiting for an hour or 2 hours. It's being greeted when you get off the plane. It's being disembarked first rather than having to wait. It's those sorts of small things.
And just explain, vast majority of people, able-bodied, that terrible phrase, won't necessarily understand the indignity, perhaps, of how it can make you feel. Just to explain to people why it is so important to get this right.
Well, I think it's the choice between making people feel like a second-class citizen or making people feel included. The correspondent, Frank Gardner, tweets often about how long he's stuck on planes for, sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours. Imagine being stuck on a plane, you're the last one there, you don't feel like a priority or a person at all, and that's the sort of feeling that many are reporting.
And it's also, I think, one thing we learned during the pandemic, lots of disabilities are invisible, aren't they? You can't see them. So in terms of public patience with this issue, I mean, I guess that's a big deal, because quite often a delay for other passengers, they just moan about it, so they should be more tolerant too.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a role for everyone in improving this situation.
Good. Well, listen, James Taylor, Director of Strategy at Scope, thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much. OK, Argentina have made it to the World Cup final last night in Qatar after a massive, superb, decisive 3-0 victory over Croatia.
Very happy about that.
Really was an amazing game. Lionel Messi was just a wizard.
Yeah, you said your kid's not that fussed about football because they've watched you suffer over the years for your own team that
Nottingham
you support
Forest.
here, Nottingham Forest. But actually, this really sparked their imagination.
They were just
last
like
night.
going, wow,
Yeah.
how did he do that?
Beautiful game.
Otherworldly.
Yeah. Well, listen, Morocco and France face off tonight for a spot in that final, which takes place, of course, on Sunday. Our reporter in Qatar, Paul Hawkins, joins us now. We're on the home straight, Paul. Lovely to see you. What's the mood there? I mean, that match, as Martin was describing, absolutely fabulous last night from Argentina.
Yeah, absolutely. It was all about Messi. In fact, some people are saying this may not be known as the Qatar World Cup. It could become Messi's World Cup, because the question mark over whether he's up there with the greats like Pele and Maradona is that he hasn't won the World Cup. So a lot of the neutrals willing Argentina on, to be honest, forget Argentina, they're willing Lionel Messi on to win the World Cup and to really cement his position as one of the greats. And he pulled it out of the bag last night, scoring one penalty, assisting another, and his understudy, Julian Alvarez, who plays for Manchester City, getting the other goal. Croatia were never really in the contest, to be honest. They kind of controlled possession for the first half an hour, but after that it was the Lionel Messi show, and Argentina quite comfortably in the end making their way through to a 6th World Cup final. They haven't won it since 1986, so it'd be big for the country. It'd be enormous for Lionel Messi. But later today is a really big one. France against Morocco. Morocco are 2 games away from winning the World Cup. I can't believe it. I don't think the fans can believe it either. Let's speak to one of them now. Zach's here joining us and Zach, you've flown in from the capital, Rabat.
Yes.
Just to tell me what this match tonight against France, how that feels for you.
Yeah, the thing is that I want to say thanks to Qatar, the one that organized the World Cup. We show to all the countries that they can win the organization. We are happy now to be here for all conditions to be in Qatar. We show the FIFA that any countries from a new World Cup they can be on the time. We come now to the Moroccan against France. We are not scared totally. We've been playing the semi-final with a big condition. Everybody knows that Morocco comes in, so they score only 1 in Moroccan team. This has never happened all over the World Cup.
Did you think this was going to happen before the tournament, that you would get to the semi-final?
Yes, for myself, for all the people they know about football, they know that this team is not that easy team to come just for play the first turn. No, we are happy, we are grateful, we are convinced that this team he will do a lot of things, because all the players they come from big tournament like in England, Premier League. Then we have Ziyech.
And yeah, you're going to say Ziyech.
Yeah,
you've got 14 of your 26 players were born outside Morocco, and a lot of people saying, oh, are they going to be really gelling like Moroccans? But they have.
No, this things has been gone, because now the players they know the responsibility for this year. This year 2022 is a new football. Everybody now is Moroccan playing for first league, like Hakim Ziyech, who says playing in other team in England, as well as other people. They born in France. They are in first division France. Now we're gonna give a big lesson to all the world. I want to give listen to France too. We are not scared about Mbappe, whatever. What the players come, we're going to play against them to show that we can win the World Cup. Even Argentina, we are not scared.
I am loving your confidence. Loving your confidence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.
And the other remarkable thing that I should add as well is that the Moroccan coach was only hired just before this tournament. They got rid of the guy who got them qualification, and then they brought in a brand new coach, a Moroccan coach. The previous coach was Bosnian, and then this guy, Wally Regragui, has really gelled those players, and especially there was a lot of worry that 14 of that 26 who were born outside Morocco wouldn't be able to come together, wouldn't really gel for their country, but he's brought them through it. And the other remarkable statistic is that, as Zach was saying, Morocco haven't conceded it. No one has scored against Morocco. They've only conceded one goal, and that was an own goal that they scored against themselves. So, it's all about the Moroccan defence, but they're going to certainly be up for it against the French as well, given the historical ties between the two countries.
Hi, Paul. Quick question there, Captain. Obviously, we all love an underdog. The Moroccan story is fantastic, but they probably will fall. But in terms of the neutral fans out there and back home, they really, I think, they want Messi's name on this cup, don't they, as a swan song, his final glory. Is that what the fans out there are truly after?
Do you know what, Martin? It's probably split down the middle, because loads of neutrals want Messi to win the World Cup and to be cemented as one of the greats. That's a great story as well, and a lot of people have been attracted to that. But because Morocco is the first African team in the semi-final, kind of flag bearers really for the Arab world as well, that's attracted a lot of neutrals as well. So I'd say it's pretty evenly split. Certainly in the stadium tonight, there will be way more Moroccan fans than French, and it's hard to say how it will go in the final, to be honest. I mean, Royal Air Morocco have laid on an extra 30 flights from Casablanca to Doha just for the semi-final. They're going to have to lay on way more, if Morocco are going to get to the final. And that split between the neutrals is a really interesting one, because they're two very compelling stories.
Paul Hawkins, that's fabulous. And it's great to hear that they want the Moroccans, all the Argentinians, but not the French. Because I'm feeling pretty much the same after Mbappe gloated about that Harry Kane penalty miss. You've been a legend, Paul. Thank you very much, mate. Have a good one.
Not holding back there. Love it. After the break, we'll be going through the papers. We've got Amy Cameron and David Mellor, who never hold back either. We'll see you in a sec.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 6:33. You're watching GB News with Martin Dalby and Isabel Webster. Let's bring you up to date on all of today's front pages.
Let's kick things off, shall we, with the Daily Mail reporting on the Prime Minister's plans to fix what's being called an appalling asylum farce.
The Daily Telegraph also leads with the PM's plan to tackle the Channel migrant issue.
Here's the Times. It's reporting on the fear of nursing leaders, that cancer patients and children with mental health difficulties are at risk if nurses do go on strike tomorrow in planned walkouts.
And the Sun's front page pulls no punches, targeting the RMT union boss Mick Lynch, saying, "You've lost it, Lynch." The paper says he's losing public sympathy.
And the Express asks, can we have our country back, please, as it reports on the growing opposition to strikes and union bosses. We are going through the papers this morning with the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellor, and environmental campaigner Amy Cameron. A very warm welcome, a festive welcome to both.
It's not a warm.
Always lively.
All right. It's not very warm. Actually, quite.
I mean, you know, I can't come out in the cold. I'm an old man.
I know. I relate.
mercy
I hate
upon
the
me.
cold as well. David, let's get stuck in, shall we, to the front of the Telegraph. Their headline: "I will stop those who get here by cheating." And he's written actually inside the paper, hasn't he? Saying we are right to be angry. You're allowed to be angry.
But I'm angry, okay?
I know.
I'm angry because successive ministers have made empty promises that they haven't delivered upon. I mean, Sunak says those will stop those who get here by cheating. Hang on a minute, that's what Priti Patel said years ago. The reality is, for instance, let's just take Albania, one of the world's great sources of gangsters, by the way. Albania's a member of NATO. What on earth are we doing, allowing Albanians to wash up on British beaches and then give them all access to those wonderful British lawyers who, for a few bob on the taxpayer, will help them stay? They should have dealt with this ages ago. Now, what I would like Rishi Sunak to do is to do it. Not tell us he's going to do it, just do it.
Just get it done. Interesting, wasn't it, not to see Suella Braverman yesterday making these announcements?
Well, yes,
and you talk about Priti Patel said this before. Yes, but have we heard such a comprehensive plan from a PM very early in his premiership? He's got a lot of other stuff on his in-tray. He clearly means business here, Amy.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point that I don't think we've seen Suella Braverman for a while. Possibly after that incredibly embarrassing select committee performance by her, where one of her own MPs grilled her on the sort of inhumanity of the system which she's overseeing. This is one of those situations which is increasingly happening around this government, where you're getting a horseshoe between the right and the left, where we both agree that this government is failing. And I think we are seeing that now across so many issues. We may have very different positions on what we think the solutions to these problems are, but universally the public can see that this government is failing to address the problem.
Well, hang on a minute.
Refugees.
I mean, you can't already condemn both of you this to failure before it's even started. I mean, he has now pledged his political career on this, hasn't he? He said this backlog will be gone by the end of next year.
Absolutely.
He'll be gone if it isn't.
I think
he's nailed his colours to the
You're
mast.
absolutely right, and it's very risky for that reason. And your commentator earlier from the Express had it exactly bang on. The more he talks about this, the more public concern about it goes up, the more he has to deal with it. It's a vicious circle. But I think the thing is that what he presented yesterday was just a repackaging of stuff that we've predominantly heard before. These are unworkable solutions in inverted commas. They're largely immoral. They're casting around.
Why is it immoral
on this
to stop Albanians from coming in here?
I mean,
what have you got in favour of Albanians?
Really
why should Albania,
close.
which is a member of NATO, why should Albanians be allowed to come here just by tipping up on a beach?
But I just find the demonisation of a single group of people really, really close.
But do you know about Albanian gangsters? How familiar are you with gangsters?
I'm not super familiar with gangsters, David.
Well, that's perfectly obvious. Otherwise, you wouldn't think that it was actually a good thing if Albanian gangsters came here. 12,000 of them last year.
I think we know that the situation predates this increase this year in Albanians crossing the Channel. We've got a long-running problem with our asylum system. It's absolutely creaking after decades of underfunding by this government.
Oh, rubbish.
Yes, there has been I think we actually agree on that, David, that the asylum system is broken.
I'm going to step in here if I could. You notice I'm staying very silent, which is unusual for me.
I know.
Mainly because I agree with both of what you're saying. I want to come to one of the proposed solutions, which comes to your story here. And we mentioned in the previous section, there's been an outcry about one of the solutions, because £6 million a day on hotels, where we currently stand, is simply going down terribly. in the red wall that will decide the next election. So they're coming up with this new solution, the Pontins Revolt, sticking migrants in disused holiday villages.
This is front of the eye this morning.
Front of the eye, and this has gone down really badly, and I wonder why.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's right that people are concerned about how much money we spend housing people. I think we also have to recognise that the way we've been housing them has been pretty substandard. We know that.
But why should we house them properly? They turn up on our beaches. Under asylum law, they have no right to be here. The asylum law says that if you leave a country which is hostile to you and then you arrive in a safe country, the safe country should give you shelter. These people will have travelled through a dozen safe countries in order to come here.
With you on that, but they are now here. They have to sleep somewhere. Look at the temperatures outside. The cost of the hotels is astronomical. Is this not a logical alternative whilst that backlog is being cleared up?
I think the solution is exactly that, right? We need to massively speed up the processing of claims because otherwise we are going to have to house people, and we have to house people in a way that is like safe and decent. I do think that Britain has a reputation of being a kind of decent country. That is one of the reasons why people are so keen to try and build lives here. And so I think that the fundamental solution here is, one, we have to open up safe routes so that people who are fleeing desperate situations have a safe way to arrive.
But what makes you think all these cliches that come out about desperate situations? These people, there's nothing desperate about Albania. These people are gangsters. They're not escaping from gangsters.
Many women we know are vulnerable to sexual exploitation.
Poverty is entirely different.
Absolutely it is.
There's economic migrants.
But there are a mix of factors here, right? First of all, we do know that many of the people that come over are women. I know there has been an increase in men, but there are still many people
they're young men.
Women.
As a proportion.
They're young. You're just making that up. They're young men.
I find this demonisation of people who we might decide don't have a right to stay in the UK. That doesn't mean that they are terrible people for trying to build better lives for themselves. I think we have to be really careful about that rhetoric.
Part of the framework of this is the statement of truth that Albania is a safe country. And the European Union already agree with that.
Of course.
So this is specifically addressing not the issue you're talking about refugees fleeing war zones, specifically Albania, which is already a safe
I think we have to recognise that although there has been an increase in Albanians, who many are fleeing quite...
When you say there's been an increase, you say that glibly. There's been an increase. 3 years ago, 50. Last year, 12,000.
So 30% of those who crossed in the first 9 months of this year were from Albania, compared to 3% in 2021.
But that still means that 70% of people who crossed are not Albanian.
The Prime Minister on this, though. Even the Prime Minister is saying it is unfair when our generosity is abused by people coming here.
So what's he going to do about it? We can agree on that.
Do you know, for me, the thing that sticks out as the most unlikely solution that he's come up with is doubling the number of caseworkers, because we're seeing across the board how hard it is to recruit people, not least into the Home Office, where there's huge problems, Border Force, huge problems there as well. It sounds great to double the number of caseworkers.
But this is naive rubbish, and he shouldn't be doing this. Look, I spent 5 years at the Home Office, a tough time, and I can tell you this. Once you allow them to fall into the lap of the social services, lawyers and the rest of it, you've lost. What you have to do is stop them from having any rights in the UK to obtain that kind of help, because otherwise they just become part of the system, and before you know it, your friendly neighbourhood hotel down the road that you can't afford to stay in is full of asylum seekers. Sorry, I don't buy into that.
You'll have to forgive me. We're going to interrupt this lively debate because there is a developing situation in the Shetland and Orkney Islands this morning. A major incident there declared by the Scottish Government. Another 10 centimetres of snow being forecast there. And indeed, that Met Office yellow warning for North Scotland and North East England has been extended. And I'm pleased to say we can actually make contact with a green badge tourist guide there, Paula Moss, for an update on the situation. It sounds, not to be too dramatic about it, but it sounds like survival mode is fully on at the moment, although I can see lights where you are.
Yeah, it very much is survival mode. It started at 3:30 on Monday. I worked from home and my computer went out and the lights at home haven't actually come back on. The reason you're seeing lights at the moment is because I actually had to relocate to my flat in Lerwick there is power. But I live on a small craft just about 8 miles north of Lerwick, but their power is still out. And it very much is survival mode. I went into bed at 9:30 on Monday evening because it was just too cold. But we got a generator running yesterday to get the heating on and keep the deep freezers going. And so pretty much is survival mode. And to get away from the house just north of Lerwick, to get to Lerwick, my partner actually had to tow me away from the house because as much as we live close to the near to the main road, we couldn't get the vehicle to the main road. So, but here I am, safe and warm now, thankfully.
Thousands of homes are still without power. SSEN Distribution, who are Scottish Power, are working hard to try and restore power, but I'm told it could be before the end of the week. And in the meantime, lots of people's lives, quite frankly, will be at risk because of those terrible temperatures. I believe a body of a woman was found yesterday in the snow, not known if it is weather-related, but it's certainly a very concerning picture up there.
Yeah, no, it is. There are still a lot of properties. We have been told that we have a lot of engineers arriving on the island today. Just on either side of my property, just north of Lerwick, there are power lines down all over the place. The lines just couldn't take the weight of the snow that was clinging to them. But in Shetland, we have the most amazing community spirit and everybody looks after each other. And I was told that one of our community halls had opened to provide warmth and food to some of the local people. And neighbours will always check on each other here. It's an amazing way of life, and we all look after each other as best we can.
What about the schools and even the hospitals? Are they open, or is it a complete lockdown?
The schools are, I believe, still closed today. And thankfully, I would imagine the hospital would, I haven't had an update on that, so I can't speak on that, but I would imagine they will still be open for emergencies only. And everything that's not essential has closed down and cancelled. Yeah, it's just for the safety of everybody. It really is quite treacherous out there.
Yeah, it really does sound it. And those temperatures in Scotland, minus 17.3 degrees Celsius recorded in Braemar. I know it's on the mainland, but crazy cold. We'll send you the best wishes of the GB News team, and do keep us posted on how you guys get on. That major incident ongoing there being declared by the Scottish Government whilst they work to try and restore power to thousands of homes.
OK, and stay with us. We'll have more from the papers. We're speaking to former Immigration Minister Damien Green after this.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Rishi Sunak has vowed to end the Channel migrant crisis, saying those who enter the country illegally will be barred from claiming asylum.
The comments come after he unveiled a new 5-point plan to tackle illegal immigration that includes an end to housing migrants in hotels and the reclassifying of Albania as a safe country, meaning the majority of asylum seekers from there will be sent back.
Well, joining us now is the former Minister for Immigration, Damien Green. Good morning to you, Mr Green. So these plans, they seem like a last-ditch attempt to save this government from wipeout.
No, they are a perfectly sensible set of plans to deal with what is one of the most difficult problems facing the country today. I think, well, I know from my own email inbox that many people are concerned about people coming across the Channel in small boats. We know that a third of them are Albanians. So I think of the five new announcements that the Prime Minister made yesterday, the deal with Albania is particularly important. Albania is a safe country. It's an applicant member to the EU. It's a NATO ally of ours. So, and I observe as a fact that no Albanians can claim asylum or successfully claim asylum in Germany and Sweden and Holland, other countries that are safe European countries like we are. And yet we grant something like a half of all applications. So clearly we need to declare that Albania is a safe country so that people can't just come here and claim asylum. There is no need. They are safe at home.
Stakes incredibly high for the Prime Minister on this, though, because he has made it so clear that he wants his backlog cleared by the end of next year, that if he fails, it will be the end of his premiership and perhaps even of the government, won't it? Not least on the back of this latest poll, Savanta yesterday, saying if there was an election today, Labour would win a 314-seat majority. Conservatives would only be left with 69 seats. He has to get this right.
Yeah. I mean, I think one poll is one poll, and there's not going to be an election today, so we can sort of ignore that. But this, as I say, this is a very important issue. The Prime Minister knows that perfectly well. That's why he's taken such a close personal interest in it, working with the Home Secretary, and that's why we've produced what is the first steps. I mean, these are measures that don't require legislation, apart from the agreement with Albania, having a new small boat operational command so that we bring together all the law enforcement agencies, releasing Border Force to crack down on illegal working, and also building or using different types of accommodation so that fewer people have to be in hotels, which is obviously very expensive and often distresses people in local communities. So this is a first set of measures. There will be new law in early next year as well, which will add to the downward pressure on people who want to try and come into this country using small boats across the Channel.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough talk, and it's talk we've heard, frankly, before from Priti Patel, even from David Cameron. And isn't part of the problem is that our own legislation, brought in by your former boss, Theresa May, the Modern Slavery Act, allows this kind of loopholery. It allows this kind of abuse, and this is a self-inflicted disaster, Mr Green.
Well, modern slavery does exist, and Britain leading the way in fighting it through legislation is something that we should all be proud of. As ever, with any legislation, there are people who are trying to exploit loopholes, and that will be part of the legislation that the government introduces in the new year. But it will be wider than that. And I think the combination of that legislation and also these practical measures, which obviously can happen faster, will mean that we will be able to see a real difference over the coming 12 months.
Practical measures happen quickly? I mean, one of the suggestions was doubling the number of caseworkers. Well, if you think about how long it takes for the Home Office to process a new passport, or indeed the fact that a lot of Border Force are out on strike at the moment, this idea is just cloud cuckoo land, isn't it?
Well, no, you can recruit more asylum caseworkers, but also...
I mean, where do you imagine these from? There's huge problems with recruitment right across all sorts of sectors at the moment.
Well, you can. It is an interesting job. Obviously, it's a very important job. I mean, I know from my time as immigration minister, asylum caseworkers take their job very seriously and recognise how important it is. So, I'm sure we will be able to recruit some more. But also, the other key is increasing the productivity, particularly since the pandemic. The number of decisions that each asylum caseworker is making has gone down to levels that are frankly unacceptable. So, to get through this backlog, we need to increase and speed up the whole system of assessing an individual asylum claim. And I know that's a significant part of this new package.
Well, Mr. Green, I'm not surprised. We do agree on the £6 million a day on hotels. In fact, the Holiday Inn in Ashford, your constituency, seems to be filled with these kinds of people. But shoving them around into places like Pontins, holiday camps, working class coastal communities, Linton on Ouse, I've spent time up there, the RAF base, the locals were horrified by having these people dumped upon them. Aren't you just kind of shifting this problem around where the actual issue is stopping them coming into the country in the first place?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything. I think there isn't a single silver bullet that will solve the problem. You've got to hit it at all levels. And that's why, as well as the measures to get people out of hotels, and indeed you're right, there is huge concern in my constituency about the use of the Holiday Inn. But I think so as well as that measure, which will be cheaper for the taxpayer, which is obviously good news, but also this new command will act as an enforcement deterrent. We have reinstituted what's called the Calais Group, which is all the Northern European countries and us, so that we can have a coordinated attempt. Because again, from my own experience, I can tell you that if we stopped up the French route, then the criminal gangs would start trying to use Belgium and Holland to come here. So all countries have to cooperate. And that's started again in recent months. And I think that's the big step forward.
Sorry to rush you, Mr. Green. I just want to ask you about the situation with strikes. The Office for National Statistics yesterday saying 1 million working days have so far been lost to strike action so far in this country, the highest in decades. Can we really afford this sort of disruption? Front of the Express have got it. Can we have our country back, please? We've got to sort this out.
Yeah, and it takes two sides to sort out industrial disputes. I've said in the past that I think there is suspicious coordination between some of the unions. It's as though some of the more hardline union leaders want this to be a quasi-general strike, which is clearly very wrong. There are obviously different levels of sympathy, frankly, for different strikes.
Well, effectively, in lockdown, lots of businesses simply can't afford this, and the government needs to do more.
Well, the government is doing what it can. What it can't do is just grant, say, a 19% pay rise, because we know inflation is high at the moment.
Sit down and actually discuss pay with nurses, though, couldn't they?
But if you meet all the demands, then you make it inflation permanent, and the people who suffer most from inflation are the poor, and you can't do that.
Well, it would help surely if the Health Secretary actually sat down for those negotiations.
He did. He has. Steve Buckley has.
He refused to discuss pay.
Well, I think that the idea that a Secretary of State should discuss the details of what will no doubt be a complex deal, not just including pay, but also conditions, is a bit weird. It's a bit back to the sort of beer and sandwiches with trade union barons that we saw way back in the 1970s. I don't think we want to go back to that.
This problem.
Sorry?
A lot of people will think that's the government washing their hands of this problem, saying it's not the job of the Health Secretary. Come on, it's on his watch at the end of the day.
Yeah, but the employer of the nurses and indeed the ambulance workers and so on is the NHS, and the NHS leaders obviously work very closely with the Health Secretary, and it is for the NHS bosses to do the detailed negotiations rather than the Secretary of State.
OK. Damien Green, MP for Ashford, we really appreciate your thoughts this morning. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Let's get a brief bit of reaction from our newspaper panel. I'm afraid we haven't got time to go through more papers, but some thoughts. I could see you chomping at the bit there, David.
Yes, I mean, most of his answers were wrong. Let me begin, first of all, with Damien Green. In the good old days, Mrs. Thatcher, we used to have a phrase for some of our colleagues, dripping wet. He is dripping wet. Now, the right answer he should have given about not negotiating over pay is that nurses' pay is recommended by an independent panel. Just because they don't like what the independent panel says is not a reason for the government to throw it all up in the air. Once they get rid of the shelter provided by an independent panel, then there's seriously big problem. But what was really bad was about the confusion over this business about asylum. Look, either these people have a right to claim asylum or they don't. The government is decreeing that they do not have a right to claim asylum, and we know all the reasons, and I won't repeat them. But so what is all this about? Getting more caseworkers. You only need a caseworker when there's a case. There isn't a case because they have no right to be here.
Amy, one thing that I picked up on there, he was like saying, oh, it's the bad old days of sandwiches and beer with the unions. Yeah, and it's the bad old days of the winter of discontent, 1978, manifesting itself again. So they can't just dismiss these talks offhand, can they?
No, absolutely not. And I think the government are really misplaying this. They have this sense that the longer they allow this situation to go on, the worse it theoretically will be for Labour. But there is zero evidence of that. The longer the situation goes on, the more people will lay the blame squarely at the feet of the government, who are failing to resolve the situation, and that is what is driving the strike, and that's what's driving the inconvenience for people. So I think the government are really misplaying this, and it's only going to keep damaging them the longer the country feels like it's being, tied up and stagnated because of their refusal, as you say, Isabel, to get around the table and negotiate in good faith with our much-loved nurses.
And it's interesting, this idea that, it's actually down to the pay body. I mean, that's advisory. At the end of the day, it's up to the minister whether to accept or reject.
No. The minister should stay completely out of this. Look, we say that the government aren't doing very well, and they're not. But the person who's really on the rack at the moment is Mick Lynch. You look at The Sun.
You've lost
mad
it, Lynch.
RMT Mick piles on Mirror. On misery, you've lost it, Lynch. At the end of the day, he is trying to drive a coach and horses through the government by getting his members to spearhead the kind of attack on inflation, to get inflation earnings, that then all the other unions... this is a general strike. In all but name, this is a general
David,
strike.
quickly, you were in politics in that original winter of discontent.
Yeah.
How similar does this feel
so briefly,
to those days?
You've got 10 seconds.
Very similar, and it can be sorted out as it was then, if they've got the guts and they've got the know-how to do it. So come on, Rishi, get a grip.
David Mellor, Amy Cameron, an abridged paper review this hour. We'll have more on Rishi Sunak's plan to tackle the Channel migrant crisis in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Thank you both.
Rishi Sunak stakes his political future on ending the Channel crisis as he unveils his 5-point migrant plan.
Good morning. It is 7 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 14th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Daubney. And here's what's leading our news this morning.
The Prime Minister has said migrants who try to reach the country illegally will be banned from claiming asylum. Unveiling a new plan to tackle small boat crossings, he pledged to abolish the backlog of over 90,000 asylum claims by the end of next year.
The government will hold another Cobra meeting today to discuss mitigating the effects of strikes as Royal Mail workers join the wave of walkouts. Rail strikes continue again today, bringing train services to a standstill across the country.
And Argentina have made it to the World Cup final after a decisive, superb 3-0 victory over Croatia last night. The team led by the wizardry of Lionel Messi will face either France or Morocco in the final on Sunday.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card image, which shows the couple holding hands with their 3 children on a sunny walk in Norfolk. Just to say the breaking news in the last few moments, just to tell you, inflation figures have just come out and they are down from 11.1 to 10.7. So we'll get full analysis of that for you a little bit later on in the programme.
And that is really interesting because that's directly affecting these union talks about their pay demands. Get in touch the usual way on that or anything else this morning via email, gbviews@gbnews, or just drop us a message and let us know where you're coming from so we can give your town a shout out.
So our top story this hour, Rishi Sunak's vowed to end the Channel migrant crisis, saying those who enter the country illegally will be barred from claiming asylum.
Yeah, the comments come after he unveiled a new 5-point plan to tackle illegal immigration, and that includes an end to housing migrants in hotels at £6 million a day and the reclassifying of Albania as a safe country, meaning the majority of asylum seekers from there will be sent back.
The Prime Minister also announced he'll double the amount of caseworkers in an attempt to abolish the backlog of over 90,000 asylum claims by the end of the year.
Writing in the Daily Telegraph today, the Prime Minister said people are right to be angry and pledged to act decisively to avoid the situation getting any worse.
Well, let's get some analysis now from Dan Falvey, who's Deputy Digital Political Editor of the Daily Express. Look, I suppose really interesting, given the plethora of pressing issues on the Prime Minister's desk at the moment, that he spent 7 weeks really focusing on this, what he will consider a landmark policy. And he really needs to make this work, doesn't he?
Yeah, polling shows that it's the second most important issue to Conservative voters and voters in the Red Wall after the cost of living crisis. So he knows that this is key to winning the next election, is doing something on this. But you say landmark policy, spent 7 weeks on this. We actually don't have much of the detail. We've heard broad scope of what he wants to do, but exactly how this is going to work and if it will work is still yet to be seen.
And we had Damien Green on, MP for Ashford, a moment ago, and part of the problem, isn't it, was Theresa May introducing the modern slavery laws, which, of course, were very, very laudable in parts, but they've been widely abused by Albanians in particular, and they're basically pretending they've been trafficked, and that's causing this problem, isn't it?
Man, I'm going to slightly disagree. Well, I'm not going to disagree necessarily on exactly that might be the case. What I'm going to say is that the government have said that this is the issue, and if we change these laws, it will make the difference. But we've heard this before. We've heard them before say that the problem was our laws needed change, and the Nationality and Borders Bill introduced by Priti Patel was meant to make the difference, and it hasn't. We're now hearing them say that it's due to the modern slavery laws. If we change them, that will make the difference. It's a gamble, because if that doesn't make a difference, if they change those laws and nothing happens, Conservative voters are going to say, well, hold on, what's the point of voting for you? Keep telling me you're going to change things to make this better, and nothing happens. So it's a gamble.
You are right, and we talked about the poll here, which at the moment, a 314 seats majority for Labour. Now, 80 seats was a whopping majority. What kind of majority is that? It's off the planet. And Rishi Sunak himself and Boris Johnson look set to lose their seats.
Yeah, I mean, I always take these polls with a bit of a pinch of salt, but I think what it does show is just how big the scale of the problem is for the Conservatives. And bizarrely, they seem to, I'd say, have their head in the sand with it slightly. They seem to partially be reluctantly accepting that they're probably going to lose the next election, or just pretending the polls don't exist. I think, actually, when you heard Damien Green said, look, there's not going to be an election tomorrow, so let's just ignore that poll, I think shows a lot of the mood of the Conservatives at the moment. I think it's such bad news. They just would rather pretend those polls aren't out there.
What about the way they're handling the strikes? I mean, we talked to Damien Green about all of that, and look, the public mood is certainly not, I think, is on the turn. And if you go by The Sun, who was sort of turning on Mick Lynch, people are fed up. Lots of restaurant owners, and we'll be speaking to one later in the programme, saying he's costing him something like £8,000, these rail strikes the next couple of days. We're seeing nursing leaders from Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England coming out and imploring the RCN not to go ahead with this walkout tomorrow. Do people see the way the government's handling this as good or bad, though, even though their support for the strikes might be waning?
I think you're right, people are fed up, but they're fed up all round. They're fed up with the unions for ruining. We're about to have Christmas, and third Christmas in a row is potentially going to be ruined through things such as a train strike, postal strikes. They're fed up with that, but they are fed up with the government for not taking action on this. 2019 election, the Conservatives promised legislation to stop rail strikes, bringing the country to a complete halt. That legislation still has not been introduced. We're now expecting it in the new year, and it won't actually be able to make a difference until next year. A lot of Conservative voters are saying, hold on, why haven't you done something about it already? They're fed up with the government not taking action to clamp down on these strikes.
Now, it's worth pointing out that if the government did cave to these double-digit union demands, it would cost £28 billion. That's £1,000 for every household in Britain. Now, I think as the rail strikes carry on, people can't see their families, they can't get their post across the Christmas, and even more worrying, if people start dying as a result of these NHS, and next week it's the paramedic strikes. Do you think that this might be get-out-of-jail card for the government? The public mood will swing dramatically back against the strikes.
I think the move against the strikes, will shift. But as I say, I don't think it's just going to be the RMT. I think the government are going to face their own frustration. from voters why they're not doing something about it. I think both sides... Look, I'm going to sound like a politician here. I'm going to say both sides need to get round the table and do something because, quite frankly, the public are fed up with a lot of them.
Yeah, and look, to put you on the spot, because we just literally in the last few minutes got the breaking news from the ONS on where we are with inflation. That does feed into all of this, because when you're talking about, that, for example, the nurses asking for RPI plus 5%, and if that's gone down, which it has, 10.7% now, down from 11.1%, that reduces what they're asking for. Surely that means that everybody has to get back in the room and discuss all of this.
Well, those inflation figures are good news. You know, the idea that we might be getting back control of this, and the idea, I think we're expecting inflation to be much, much better by this time next year if everyone tightens their belts. But you know, if these strikes aren't going to go away anytime soon, the RMT are suggesting they could do 6 months of strikes. So we could be here for a long time. And if they cave to those pay demands, if they gave those inflation-busting pay increases, then some of that hard work on inflation will be dead in the water and we'll be back to square one.
Dan, thank you very much. Although, interestingly, David Mellor said this feels very much like the original winter of discontent back in the 1978 government, which brought down the Labour government. Could this bring down the Tories? We'll have to just wait and see. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, we touched on it there. Postal strikes have continued around the UK today as a result of disputes over pay.
And now, in the days running up to Christmas, one group of people being particularly affected by these strikes are small businesses who absolutely rely on delivery services. Well,
our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper joins us now for more on this from Warrington. And, you know, this is peak season, isn't it, for a lot of small businesses trying to capitalise on that Christmas demand and just simply not being able to satisfy customer requests.
Absolutely. Well, it's about -6 degrees here in Warrington this morning, but that hasn't stopped Royal Mail workers heading out to the picket line. I'm sure you can see over my right shoulder that people are already there. They've got the fires burning. Now, as you said a moment ago, these strikes are as a result of a dispute over pay. Now, the unions say that last year the Royal Mail made over £750 million in profit and can therefore afford to pay their workers a pay increase in line with inflation and the cost of living crisis. Now, this is the 4th strike day for postal workers in December. They're also planning on striking tomorrow and then next week on the 23rd and 24th. Now, the 24th is, of course, Christmas Eve, and you mentioned there the importance of delivery services over the Christmas period and how this will impact small businesses. Now, yesterday I spoke to one small business owner to find out how these strikes are affecting her business.
Being a small business owner and making my clothes handmade to order, it means my production time in itself is longer than usual. I've had to move my final order date a lot sooner than usual, meaning essentially I'm going to have less orders, less profit and less money to invest into my new collections next year. If I'm going to stick with Royal Mail, I just need them to stop striking, just so that I have a reliable courier service and I can make sure that my customers are getting their orders on time and I'm not worrying once they've left me if they're actually going to get to them on time. If the customer doesn't get their parcel on time, I worry that they won't order from me again because they'll think that potentially it was my fault. And for me as a small business, trust and customer relationships are one of the most important things that help my business.
Just heard from Ella there. There's a real sense of panic for these small businesses. If their products aren't being delivered to customers on time, then they're worried that they'll lose business in the future. Now, the Royal Mail's stance on this is that they've offered the union and their workers a 9% pay increase paid over the next 18 months, among other things. They say that that is their final and best offer. But by the sounds of it, the union are not going to be willing to accept what the Royal Mail has to offer. And as a result, this winter of discontent, for Royal Mail workers anyway, still looks set to continue.
Thank you very much. And we can just see behind you there, that's a picket line, I'm assuming, of the Communication Workers Union, the Postal Union. I'm talking to Dave Ward a little after 9 o'clock earlier. He's a General Secretary of that union, to see what he's got to say, because absolutely small businesses are feeling the brunt of this, and I really am genuinely concerned that people are going to start just turning to the big ones like Amazon, and small ones will be failing. Anyway, thanks
Sophie,
for that report.
Thank you very much.
OK, new figures released in the past few moments. The rate of inflation has eased from 10.7 to 11.1 last month, according to ONS.
Well, the Chancellor has also been speaking in the last few minutes. Jeremy Hunt saying inflation is the #1 enemy. He went on to say the aftershocks of COVID-19 and Putin's weaponisation of gas mean high inflation is plaguing economies across Europe. I know families and businesses are struggling here in the UK. Getting it down is my top priority, which is why we're holding down energy bills this winter through our energy price guarantee scheme and implementing a plan to help halve inflation next year. I know it is tough for many right now, but it is vital that we take the tough decisions needed to tackle inflation. And he goes on to say if we make the wrong choices now, high prices will persist and prolong the pain for millions.
Well, that's an ambitious target to halve it. Can that be achieved? Well, with us now is Economics Director of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, Suren Thiru. Welcome. So you've just heard those breaking figures. I hope inflation's slightly down. That's good news. The Chancellor says he can halve inflation in the next year. Do you believe that can happen?
Well, it is good news that inflation is slowing a little bit, but it's still pretty grim. Inflation is still in double digits and it's at its highest rate since around the 1980s. So that's pretty grim. I think what we are likely to see over the next year is that inflation starting to come down. And that's due to a number of reasons. Firstly, the way inflation is calculated, we'll see that help to bring down inflation over the next year because of base effects. What we always like to see, and we're seeing it a bit in the moment, is some of the inputs into inflation, like commodity prices falling. That will have a downward pressure on inflation as well. And also, as we move into recession, demand from customers, from businesses will also fall as well. That will actually bear down inflation as well. So what we are like to see inflation fall relatively quickly over the next year. It may be as quick as many people expect. For example, the Chancellor.
I'm interested to know whether or not you think the announcement yesterday in America on inflation feeds into all of this. We saw Wall Street breathing a huge sigh of relief at the close of play yesterday in the FTSE 100, very, very happy in response. And also what you think the Bank of England is likely to announce tomorrow in terms of interest rates in relation to today's reduced inflation figures.
Yeah, what we're seeing in the UK, particularly some of the major drivers of inflation, particularly the global energy shock we've seen over the past year, that it happens elsewhere. So while we see inflation fall elsewhere, it is likely to impact the UK as well. What's quite interesting in data is what's happening beneath the surface as well, because what we're seeing is core inflation, which strips out some of those more volatile aspects like food and fuel, also falling in later days, which is encouraging some of the Bank of England tracks quite closely. But we are still likely to see quite a hefty jump of interest rates tomorrow. For example, we're expecting a 50 basis points interest rate rise tomorrow, which will take interest rates to 3.5%. But what will be interesting to see tomorrow is how the MPC votes on the interest rate rise. And what we'd like to see is a bit of a split, in that we see more of the MPC members looking to either a smaller increase or no increase at all. And that gives you a sense that there may be a pivot. So we've seen over recent times consistent rises in interest rates. That's likely to change over the coming months as we see the recession hit and we see inflation start to drop.
Suren, I'm interested in the effect of these decreased inflation figures on the current negotiations with the unions, because, of course, if they're after a inflation-based pay rise and inflation is going to halve over the next year, will this help the government and have the unions, you think, overplayed their hand?
Well, although inflation is falling, it's still in double digits. And what we are likely to see it fall over the next year, that fall is likely to be relatively slow, because what we're seeing in later stage as well is that inflationary pressures are becoming pretty broad-based. For example, service inflation, which is a large part of the economy, still relatively high in the latest figures. So what we are likely to see over the next year is inflation falling, but the gap between inflation and wage growth is still being quite significant. So that's going to have an issue with negotiations. But what we're also likely to see as well is because as we see the impact of the recession hit, weakening customer demand, the ability of businesses to pay high wages is going to be more constrained over the next year because their cost pressure is going up at a time when demand is also falling.
And just lastly, you know, it is a decrease, albeit small. How long do you think it will be till people start to feel a bit better off? Because that cost of living crisis just continuing to bite for so-called ordinary people like you and me.
That's right. And what you're also seeing is the elements of inflation that are still really high at the moment. That's food and fuel. And that hits lower-income households in particular. We think that while inflation is likely to drop back over the next year, 2023 is going to be a really tough year for households and businesses, because you're likely to see a perfect storm of high interest rates, still high inflation and high taxes impacting both houses and businesses. So you'll be likely not to see a real material improvement until 2024, and hoping the economy is in recovery and inflation is back close to the 2% band within the target.
OK, Sur and through, thank you for joining us this morning. Much appreciate your take on matters. Thank you.
Thank you. At the time, 7:17, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. And thousands of people have been left without power as snow and ice continues to hit parts of the UK. It comes as the Scottish Government's declared a major incident for Shetland yesterday. This is after almost 3,000 homes lost electricity. The Met Office has extended a yellow warning for snow and ice in northern Scotland and northeast England until Friday. Scotland recorded temperatures of -17 yesterday.
And Top Gear presenter Andrew Freddie Flintoff is in hospital after being involved in a crash filming for the new show Top Gear. The incident happened at the Top Gear test track in Surrey yesterday morning. The Sun reports the former professional cricketer was airlifted to hospital but is not thought to have suffered any life-threatening injuries. And get well soon, Freddie.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released this, their official Christmas card. If you're listening on the radio, the image shows William and Kate walking along a path in Norfolk, hand in hand with their delightful children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, looking picture perfect, it has to be said. And this follows swiftly after the King and Queen consort released their own Christmas card at the weekend. A little bit earlier, this sort of, I don't know, what do you feel about a family photograph being put on a Christmas card? Personally, although I'm a huge fan of the Waleses, let it never be said that I'm not a fan of theirs, I don't know about seeing a summery family photo on a Christmas card. I prefer to see a wintry scene, maybe even a nativity scene, something like that. It is Christmas after all.
Well, I think that brings some welcome cheer to these dark times, winter of discontent, there's a summer of beauty. But one thing I really have a problem with are those updates on our amazing year cards.
Oh, right, a round robin,
yeah, the round robin.
All the achievements of the family.
It never mentions any of the bad stuff.
Yeah.
Look at our perfect life. Here we are in matching jumpers. It makes me want to
chuck it in the bin.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Let me never send you a round robin. Not that I've ever sent one, but yeah, noted. Listen, we've got some breaking news for you this morning, and we can speak to one of our top reporters about all of this. UK authorities are involved in a dramatic rescue operation at the moment. This after a small migrant boat has got into difficulties in the English Channel overnight.
Horrendous stuff. OK, GB News understands that as a number of people were airlifted from the boat, their conditions are not yet known. But let's speak now to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, tell us more. What's the latest?
Well, this event unfolded just before 3 a.m. this morning. Reports of a migrant boat in distress off the Kent coast, a few miles off Dungeness. Now, involved in this operation are Border Force vessels, 2 lifeboats, we understand, also the Royal Navy, a patrol boat involved, 2 Coast Guard helicopters from Leigh Airport and from Portsmouth, and French fishing boats that were in the area as well have also been involved in this operation. Now, we're told that a number of people, we understand, have been airlifted from this migrant boat. We don't know at this stage what the conditions are, but our producer down in Kent is in Dover at the moment. He's seen the air ambulance land at Dover Harbour, along with 2 land ambulances arriving at that port as well. So this is still very much ongoing. We are in the early stages, really, in terms of the information dripping out from that. I mean, what I will say is a caveat is that it is a sort of a tried and tested operational plan that the people smugglers have, which is to call the emergency services in the UK when you get halfway across the channel, tell them you're in difficulties, and then you're guaranteed to be picked up. But this particular incident is definitely unusual in terms of the response that we're seeing. We never normally see so many search and rescue assets being sent to a specific incident, so it seems on the face of it that it may well be a bit more serious.
Now, Mark, of course, every life lost is a terrible, terrible waste, a terrible blight on this human trafficking. But this is something that many of us who are concerned about halting the arrivals over the channel like this have been saying is going to happen for a long time. We see often, Mark, these craft are barely seaworthy, and surely these terrible, terrible tragedies, if that's what it is, this is further evidence that we must stop these craft even leaving France in the first place, Mark.
Yes, well, we have to hope that it hasn't turned into a tragedy. But remember, we are just 13 months on from a terrible tragedy in the English Channel when a small boat capsized and 27 people drowned in that particular incident. And since then, there have been individual incidents where one or two people have been lost. We don't exactly know how many because they fall overboard. Their bodies are often never recovered. It is dangerous. The UK authorities, government ministers here and in France have been warning people not to attempt this crossing, especially at this time of the year because conditions are so unpredictable in the English Channel. It's sub-zero out there at the moment as well. Even just, hypothermia is a very big risk when you're in the water for many hours before you get across in that flimsy little inflatable. And of course, all this comes less than a day now after the Prime Minister announced a raft of proposals that he hopes will help clamp down on the small boats crisis. Everything they've tried thus far hasn't worked. One thing they're going to do is set up a small boats operational command to bring together Border Force, lifeboats, the National Crime Agency, so that they're better coordinated in dealing with these boats coming across. But the breaking news this morning is this major air-sea rescue that's underway in the Channel. A number of assets involving Border Force, lifeboats, Coast Guard helicopters and French fishing vessels have all been involved. And we understand that a number of people have been airlifted, ambulances waiting.
Listen, that was Mark White reporting for us, and we will keep a close eye on that clearly very serious situation unfolding in the Channel. Mark there referring to the worst maritime disaster in 30 years that happened in November 2021. There will be serious concerns about exactly what is happening. As Mark described, there are 2 lifeboats involved, the Royal Navy, 2 Coast Guard helicopters. This is near to the coast of Dungeness. It's understood a number of migrants have been airlifted, but we do not yet know the condition of any of those involved. And as he explained, of course, it is freezing cold out there. We'll keep you posted, of course, the timing on all of this. Less than 24 hours since the Prime Minister announced big changes to try and tackle the problem of migrant crossings. A hugely poignant moment in all of this.
Yeah, it does. But irrespective of your politics, nobody should be, endangering their lives like this. It's a terrible, terrible tragedy if true. And we really, really need to get a grip with this and just stop these craft leaving. It's perilous, perilous times at the moment. The Channel can just change like that.
Yeah, we will keep you posted on that developing story. After the break, Paul Coit will be here with all the day's big sports stories as France prepares to face off against Morocco for a place in the World Cup final on Sunday.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. Just before 7:30, still to come on today's programme.
At 8:10, we'll take a closer look at the Prince and Princess of Wales' new Christmas card. Shows them walking in Norfolk with their 3 children.
And at 8:20, we'll speak to Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry, well, you will, Isabel, to find out what Labour's stance on the strikes actually is.
And remember, we love to hear from you. We are the People's Channel. Keep your thoughts coming in this morning on any of our discussions. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Wait for the sparkly snow there.
Yeah,
do its thing.
Yeah, Winter Wonderland. Well, talk about a bit of sparkle. The legendary Paul Coit
see what you did there.
joins us now to discuss the latest sports stories. And Coit, we must start with the absolute wizardry.
Yes.
Of Lionel Messi last night.
You think he's OK? You think the kid's got a future in this game?
Well, I'll tell you what, my kids, I was saying to Isabel, they don't really like football because I'm a Forest fan. All they ever see is me crying and shouting.
I don't like football because I'm a Forest fan.
Right, true.
Bless you.
But that is true. But last night they watched this and even they were going, my God, this guy's a wizard.
He is incredible.
Amazing.
He is incredible, and it's almost like the story needs to have the nice bow tied up right at the end of it. The fact that he's 37 and he's just this amazing footballer, and he's played in 6 finals, for crying out loud. People are saying that he just hasn't won that World Cup though, and this is the ridiculous thing: is when you get. Well, he can't be the world's greatest because he's never won a World Cup, which is absolutely nonsense because you could be the greatest. Well, look at Lionel Messi. You could grow up in any country, but just because your country doesn't win the World Cup doesn't make you any less a footballer. Well, it looks like, the way things are going, they are going to plan that he could win that World Cup because the way they took apart Croatia yesterday and the way that Messi took apart Croatia, there's Josko Gvardiol. He's a young, I know you've mentioned him to me as well, Isabel, a couple of weeks ago. And Gvardiol is an amazing young talent that plays for Croatia, and he's one of the stars of the tournament. Young defender, and he's been terrific. And it was almost in Messi's mind, you could see that he thought, I'll show you who the king is. And the second goal that he laid on for Alvarez, he just took this guy to the cleaners, span him inside out. And the amazing thing about Messi, it's not just about pace, because a lot of the time he has other players that do everything for him. They do all the running, but it's the turn of pace. He'll start slow, then he'll speed up, then he'll slow down. And if you try and defend against it, you're just like, what on earth am I to do? And he was magnificent.
Is Mbappe a match for him? Because that's who it's going to be, isn't it? France, Argentina in the final. It should be anyway. Look, much as I love the Morocco story, I always love an underdog. It should be France, Argentina on Sunday.
Well, the thing is, you would think so. You would think it would be Morocco. But look at who Morocco have beaten. And Morocco have conceded 1 goal in the entire World Cup. They've beaten Belgium, and at the time we're thinking, oh, Belgium aren't that good, but Morocco take them. They beat Spain, they beat Portugal. So why not? Why can't they go out and beat France? I mean, it's obviously it's almost a derby of sorts with Morocco, because they're French-speaking, of course. Most of the players play in France. There's a number of the team that were actually born in France. So it is going to be a very French affair. So why not? I think you're probably right. I think France will probably come through it, but if just look at how well Morocco have been playing, there's no reason why they can't beat them.
I just think, as a neutral now, you know, because of the cruel departure of England, I didn't like the way Mbappe celebrated when Kano missed the penalty, so I don't want the French.
Right, hold on. I'll stop you there.
Neutral,
right, I'm going to stop you there. What do you do? OK, there's a picture of Mbappe, and he's smiling, and he's... In an important game like that, had it been the other way, what would you do?
I'd have been laughing along.
you wouldn't be going, oh, poor Harry Kane. Of course you're going to celebrate. If he runs up to him like the Argentinians did against the Dutch in the quarter-final, giving it all the big ones straight afterwards, then OK. But of course you're going to smile, so don't blame him for that.
But if you want that Hollywood ending, it needs to be Messi.
Can I just ask you about Freddie Flintoff? Lots of concern about him this morning, not least in the wake of what happened to the hamster on the Top Gear set many years ago. What can you tell us?
Well, as far as we know, is that there was an incident yesterday. It wasn't high speed. I don't know whether there's anything that actually isn't high speed, because that's what Top Gear are all about. So as far as we know, he was airlifted to hospital. It's not life-threatening. We believe that he's OK, but more is going to come out. But it doesn't sound like it's life-threatening, and certainly not as bad as what happened to Richard Hammond a few years ago, because that involved, you know, that he was in a coma and it involved brain surgery. But as far as Freddie's concerned, the story is it looks like it's a nasty accident, but he should be OK.
Yeah, well, everybody loves a bit of Freddie Flintoff. He's a lovable rogue, isn't he? So we do wish him well.
Of course.
He's a tough lad. He's a tough lad, I'm sure, and I hope he'll pull through.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. You got time for the tattoo?
I don't know if we
do.
Go on.
Got time for the tattoo?
Go on.
OK, Richarlison, Brazil legend. Well, I say Brazil legend. He played very well for Brazil. Comes back to Spurs, and he's injured, but he's had a tattoo done at the end of the World Cup, and I know you love a tattoo. So if we can have a look at the Richarlison tattoo, it's very, very nice. There we are. Look at that now. He's got a tattoo of himself in the middle there, and that's Neymar on the right. And on the left, I believe that's supposed to be Ronaldo. That's the Brazilian Ronaldo. Can you imagine going into the tattoo parlour and saying, I want a picture of me, Neymar, and Ronaldo, and then you put the wrong Ronaldo on your back? That would have been very embarrassing. But there's a tattoo of him as a youngster underneath, so, you know, he may have not won the World Cup, but he's come back with a very classy, lovely tattoo.
Anybody with a tattoo of themselves, I think, have a word with yourself. That's a step too far.
You don't need to look in the mirror, though, do you? Actually, I don't know. It's probably going to be a bit tricky.
Classy and tattoo, the same sentence. Paul Coyte, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure. Thank you.
OK, after the break, we'll be going through the papers once again with David Mellor and Amy Cameron.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite...
No censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely
Welcome back. It's 7:40. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Martin Daubney and Isabel. Webster. Let's bring you up with today's front pages.
Here's the Mail. It's reporting on the Prime Minister's plan to so-called fix what's being called an appalling asylum farce.
And the Daily Telegraph also leads with the PM's plan to tackle the Channel migrant issue. And the Times reports on the fear of nurse leaders that cancer patients and children with mental health difficulties are at risk as nurses are set to go on strike tomorrow.
And the Sun's front page targeting the RMT union boss, declaring "You've lost it, Lynch." The paper says he's losing public sympathy.
And the Express asks with a hint of desperation, can we have our country back, please? As it reports on the growing opposition to strikes and union bosses.
Let's go through the papers again. David Mellor and Amy Cameron back with lots of strident views, I'm sure, this hour. David, let's start, shall we, with "You've lost it, Lynch" on the front of the Sun.
And I've taken a sedative, so I'm going to be very...
No!
Oh, please don't. We love it.
Now, the Sun really goes to town on pages 4 and 5. Duffer hits the buffers.
Oh, very good.
So they've obviously decided that Lynch is... Yeah, there was a time when they were a bit equivocal about Lynch. It was almost like they weren't sure whether he wasn't going to turn out to be quite a good thing. Because remember, the Sun is led by the popularity of people with their audience. But now they obviously think you can have a go at Lynch. So Mick rattled as support plummets. PM tells union boss to end chaos. At the end of the day, the railways are losing £1 million a day, and I think someone somewhere has got to say they're going to have to get on with the job, because the railway is not something that people feel absolutely obliged to use, and the danger is, of course, that there will be lots of redundancies. And once again, although I know I seem like some sad middle-class toff, my roots are very firmly in the working class. My grandfather joined the Union of Railway Servants at the time of the Taff Vale case, which was the big attempt to prevent trade unionism. My grandfather, who was injured in the trenches, but he came back and worked all his career as a railway guard, the days when they had three-piece suits and watch chains. So, I don't want anyone like Lynch saying to me, what do I effing Tory know about any of that? But the reality is, for a lot of people, particularly those of us who have working-class roots, what is being done, their members are being sold down the river. And, hardly has it been decided, but the Sun hasn't done it, though the Times, interestingly, did. The political motivation of some of the leadership of the RMT. This is not just about an industrial strike, it's about bringing down the government.
Yeah, well, actually, we spoke to former assistant... Deputy Assistant General of the RMT, Steve Headley, and he was saying basically bring back Corbyn.
He did, yeah.
It wasn't enough to get Labour in power. He wanted a return of Corbynism. I just want to bring Amy in on this, because it was an interesting point, I think, that David made about the impact on the rail and the fact that many people will not use the rail services after this. Now, as somebody who is supportive of unions, but also cares about the environment. This is a disaster, isn't it, for the environment, that the unions are wreaking havoc on the railways?
I think the reality is everyone knows the rail services were in a mess way before these strikes started. Years of chronic underfunding, the privatisation of the railways has seen profits be pulled out of the rail services. I think all of us know, if you're someone who lives on the west coast of the UK, train services on the west coast have been appalling for months. So this situation with the railways massively predates the unions and the strikes that are happening right now. That's one of the things that they're trying to call attention to. I absolutely agree with you. Rail in this country is completely vital for us to reduce our carbon emissions, and also I think in terms of boosting the economy right across the country, right? Rail access, public transport access is vital for levelling up for our economy, and that's why it's so essential that the government gets in a room, negotiates, and gives the rail services and the hard-working rail workers the funding.
Once again, I hate to point this out, but there's an inconsistency here, because the trouble is that if you actually persuade the government to give railway workers a lot of extra money, unless you're prepared to subsidise the railway industry further, all you do is put the prices up. And what is the reason why people won't travel on the railways? Because they're too expensive.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, though, right? Because the railways continue to make profits right through the COVID period. So they took about 500 million in profits out of the railway system during COVID. So we know that there are profits within the railway system. They're just not going to the workers. And actually, to your point, David, I think we should have a conversation
statistic, I think.
about
We'll have to check that one.
About subsidising the railways. Because, as I say, rail infrastructure is absolutely vital to people's ability to work and to live and to travel around the country. So it's key infrastructure.
Let's move on to one of your stories now. This is the next strike set for tomorrow. Nurses are coming out. Daily Mirror, again, not being at all partisan, saying, nurses, we're doing this for you.
Yeah, so I think this is one of the things we have seen with the nurse strikes is huge levels of support. People have an incredible level of solidarity with nurses, because they are the hard-working people on the front lines who held the hands of the many COVID victims through one of the...
And now they're not going to give them cancer treatment.
They are talking about a 2-day strike to demand not just better pay, but also better work.
But they're not going to give them cancer treatment.
And we know that one of the major problems in the NHS right now, right across our services, we see this again and again, is the underfunding of staff, underpayment of staff is resulting in huge understaffing. So the NHS was on its knees again well before these strikes were called, because we cannot retain skilled nurses. So we've seen wages fall in real terms about 20% for senior nurses. They're highly skilled employees who we need to be retaining, not losing.
Well, look, I think a lot of people very supportive, as you say, of nurses, but really interesting to see this 11th hour intervention, which you wanted to actually in the Express, David, but it's also in the front of the Times. And this is the nursing leaders from all four corners of the union saying that chemotherapy appointments will be cancelled tomorrow, dying patients risk being denied pain relief, and children suffering mental health crises might not get help. Now, as someone who was someone who has a friend who was receiving palliative care until she died very recently, I find this very distressing as a concept that had she still been in a hospice tomorrow, she wouldn't have been able to perhaps receive the kind of pain relief that she needed in her dying days.
These are the four chief nurses. They're not, you know, some capitalist lackeys. They're the four chief nurses, and they write, says the front page of the Times, many chief nurses / directors of nursing, which my sister was one, by the way, are, of course, RCN members themselves. And some have expressed feelings of having been let down by the RCN. I don't know how you can expect the public to say that you are an angel and then you won't treat people with cancer because you're on strike for 19%. Let's mark that. 19%. This is ludicrous.
But that's a starting position, isn't it? And we also, what I'm intrigued by is how do we think this situation changes? We know that nurses are currently being underpaid to the extent that 6 hospital trusts in the UK run food banks for staff. And we know that as a result of that, we're losing skilled nursing staff to shops for employment.
We also pay nurses worse than any other comparative European country.
Yes.
And as you say, people are leaving the sector
in their
droves.
droves.
So what is the answer to all of this? Also interesting to note, breaking news this morning, that inflation has actually gone down and the Chancellor is vowing to try and help halve it by the end of next year, which presumably has huge implications for what the RCN is asking, because of a lot of these offers are across 2 years, aren't they, that have been made by employers. So I do think that's an interesting factor.
Absolutely. I think it's worth pointing out, though, that the pay deal that they're trying to negotiate at the moment still doesn't actually bring their wages in real terms back to where they were pre-Tory.
You cannot ever run any kind of major industry or a service just by saying we've got to go back to where we were at some mythical point. At the end of the day, people have got to cope. I mean, if we went through the figures for how much expenditure on the NHS has increased, it has dramatically increased. And the idea that you could keep on not only dramatically increasing the money you put into the NHS for services, but also for pay. Yeah, with, what is it, 750,000 people employed in the NHS, you've simply got to keep an eye on the kind of pay increases that you're putting through. And the idea that, you know, there's some mythical happy point where nurses were at, and because they've moved away from that happy point, we've now got to be held to ransom so they get that happy point. I'm sorry, it's not going to work.
Again, I just come back to the point that right now nurses are leaving in their droves because we do not pay them enough. There was a report that the Government Commission came out this week that says chronic underfunding by the Tory government over successive years has left the NHS.
Why do we have all this Tory government stuff? Was it perfect under Labour?
Did
Labour pay everything?
Better.
You know, you're supposed to be an independent-minded person, not some party hack.
Ooh. And on that note,
listen, we're going to press pause on another lively pay-per-view. Can I make a request? In the next hour, I don't know if it's in the papers, but I saw Joanna Lumley had done an interview yesterday about women
being fragile,
and being a bit more fragile and all being victims and all being very fashionable. Quite controversial views. I'd love to get into that if we can, if it's in the papers. It was just a request. But Amy Cameron, David Mellor, thank you very much indeed.
Well, Amy certainly isn't fragile.
She certainly isn't. She's a tough cookie.
Next time, take 2 sedatives. No, that's just a joke. OK, so with all the...
But I can be as boring as most of the other paper reviewers on this.
No, don't do that.
Should you wish me to be.
We don't want that. OK, thank you for your input.
With all the rail children. Anyway, carry on.
With all the rail strikes today, it's not just commuters who are affected, but also the hospitality industry.
Yeah, hotels, restaurants and pubs can expect more than a third of their bookings to be cancelled this month after strikes leading up to Christmas hits trade.
Well, UK Hospitality has said the strikes are expected to cost businesses about £1.5 billion in lost sales. Restaurant owner Sam Harrison joins us now to tell us how it's affected him. Good morning to you, Sam. So I've seen some of the figures about how this has affected you in terms of cancellations, in terms of lost revenues. What have you been going through, Sam, in the last few days?
Good morning. I'd just like to start off by saying I think it's important to sort of put this into context of where the hospitality industry is, which is still in recovery mode post-pandemic, and with very, very low cash reserves after the last 2 years, and having lost the last two Decembers for obvious reasons. Yesterday and today, we've lost nearly 50% of our bookings. For lunch yesterday, we had 125 booked, and that dropped to 60. Last night, we had 185 booked, and that dropped to 130. And nearly all of those were Christmas corporate bookings, and we won't get that business back.
So how do you feel then when you see Mick Lynch coming out and giving these spiky interviews? I mean, do you feel angry? Do you feel frustrated? And do you wish that they took into consideration business owners like you in all of this?
100%. I feel very frustrated, sad, angry. It's very mixed emotions. But of course, I'm worried about my business and the financial implication. But it's also my team. You know, I'll have to cut their hours, and then it's all of my suppliers. If you think that my business is 50% down this week, then the butcher, the fishman, the wine man, all of their sales are going to be down as well. I just, yeah, I mean, I think it's disgusting, actually, the impact and the lack of sort of respect that they have for the person who really is affected by this.
Yeah, and it's true to say, isn't it, Sam, that during the lockdowns, hospitality was particularly whipped. Oftentimes, restaurants, pubs were very safe places relatively because of the airflow and the amount of money you spend to keep them safe. You've got not enough support. Is this the final letdown, do you think, by the government? Should they be stepping in, even though you're angry about Lynch, should they step in and end this so you can get back to business?
Yes, I mean, listen, we need to be trading strongly. December is 1 month in the year, but for many businesses, it should be 25, 30% of your whole year's taking. As I said, we've lost the last 2 Decembers, and now it feels like we're in lockdown again. It's exactly the same situation. You know, we're losing bookings on the day. So not only is it the loss of money, but it's the wasted food. It's the staff wages that you can't cover. So 100%, I think the government needs to do something. But more importantly, if hospitality businesses don't generate the cash we need this December, we're going to struggle through the winter. And the government has to recognise this, and something needs to be done. You know, people are saying 1 in 3 restaurants will be closed come the spring. This is a very harsh winter ahead.
Well, listen, if anyone is thinking of going to a restaurant in the Hammersmith area, I highly recommend Sam's Brasserie. I've been there myself. It was a fabulous evening. I'm very sorry to hear that it is a struggle. And I'm sure the fact that Hammersmith Bridge, which you overlook, you've got a stunning location there, the fact that that's been closed now for years, failures of local councils, national government as well, to deal with that problem, also not helpful for your business. I'm sure. A quick word on that?
Yes, I mean, Hammersmith Bridge, a lot of our customer base is that side of the river. You know, luckily for us, they can walk across. But yes, that situation does seem to have dragged on for a while.
OK, listen, Sam Harrison, really good to get your take this morning. And as I say, sorry that you're having this difficult run up to Christmas. Terrible.
Cheers. And the funny thing is, it's not just London, of course. This is happening nationwide. It's happening in my
restaurants
home city,
up and down the country.
Nottingham. And, you know, they've had so many tough years. To have another Christmas stolen away is a tragedy for hospitality.
Look, lots of views coming in. The public are not fed up with the strikers, says Antonia. Every person I've spoken to supports them. We want to carry on until their demands are met. Max says it's a bit rich, the government standing, saying it's not up to them. It has to go with what the pay review body says. Year on year for 20 years, the government's ignored the policy pay review body and given lower pay rises than the review body's recommended. It's either one or the other. Yeah, and on the topic of postal strikes, I'm speaking to the union chief at 9 o'clock. John says, so Royal Mail are going on strike at the busiest time of the year and the most profitable month when people have moved onto emails and small companies relied on them to deliver parcels or goods. They are not doing themselves any favours, John says. Well, listen, keep those views coming in. We love to hear from you. After the break, we'll have more on the Prime Minister's brand new immigration plan. We'll see you in just a second.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Breaking news as an air-sea operation is underway in the Channel after a migrant boat has capsized.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Wednesday, the 14th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel Webster and Martin Dawdley. So here's what's leading the news this morning.
So GB News understands that there are a number of fatalities in the English Channel this morning after a migrant boat has capsized. It comes as the Prime Minister has said migrants who try to reach the country illegally will be banned from claiming asylum. He unveiled a new plan to tackle small boat crossings, pledging to abolish the backlog of over 90,000 asylum claims by the end of next year.
And the government will hold another COBRA meeting today to discuss mitigating the effects of strikes as Royal Mail workers join the wave of walkouts. Rail strikes also continue today, bringing train services to a grinding halt across the country.
In football, Argentina made it to the World Cup final after a decisive 3-0 victory over Croatia last night. The team, led by Lionel Messi, will face either France or Morocco in the final on Sunday.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card image, which shows the couple holding hands with their 3 children on a sunny day in Norfolk.
We'd love to hear from you. What do you think of that card? What do you think of the Prime Minister's migrant plans? Get in touch the usual way via Twitter or email gbnews@gbnews.uk. And do remember to let us know where you're watching or listening from.
And as Isabel just outlined there, a bit of breaking news for you this morning. A migrant boat has capsized in the English Channel, throwing dozens of people into the ice-cold water. GB News understands there may be fatalities.
Well, our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, joins us now with the very latest. Clearly a very serious situation, Mark, unfolding in the Channel just over a year since 27 migrants drowned in the biggest maritime disaster in over 30 years.
Yes, and UK authorities and government ministers have been warning about the potential for a tragedy in the English Channel, similar to that one 13 months ago, if people continue to come across, especially in the winter months. Well, what we can confirm now is a major incident underway in the English Channel. It unfolded just before 3 a.m. with reports that a small migrant inflatable had capsized. Now, we understand that more than 30 people were thrown into the water. You can imagine the temperatures out in the Channel are pretty cold at this time of year. The sea temperature is probably a bit warmer than the land temperature, but still very, very cold, and hypothermia can set in extremely quickly. Now, scrambled to this air-sea rescue were Border Force vessels, 2 lifeboats, 2 Coast Guard helicopters from Lydd Airport and from Portsmouth. French fishing vessels that were in the area have been involved, and we understand have picked up some of those who were in the water. Also, the Royal Naval Patrol vessel HMS Severn, which was in the area as well, has responded to this. Ambulances and the air ambulance have landed at Dover Harbour. We understand that already some of the migrants who have been picked up in the Channel from the water have now been taken to Dover. We're told that Ashford Hospital in Kent has been told to clear the A&E, that they're expecting multiple casualties to be brought to that particular hospital as this incident continues to unfold, but a very significant incident that is unfolding in the English Channel this morning.
And Mark, you mentioned about the craft. I've been to Dover, I've seen the state. A lot of these craft, often they're kind of homemade, they're botched, they're barely seaworthy. And doesn't this just underline the fact that the true position to take on this is the humanitarian position of stopping these craft leaving France in the first place, especially at this time of year, Mark, because the conditions in the Channel can change within moments, can't they?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even from the people smugglers' point of view, the last thing they want to do is put a boat out into the Channel that's going to sink. That's bad for their business, to put it bluntly. But they take a very significant risk when they put what are effectively ad hoc vessels that are made by Chinese manufacturers to order for the criminal gangs. They're pretty flimsy. They've been known to burst. And of course, that vessel back in November of last year, it deflated while in the middle of the Channel. So a very significant risk involved in this. And of course, we know that those 27 people died 13 months ago, but there have been a number of fatal incidents that have taken place in the English Channel over the last year. We'll probably never know how many people have lost their lives because people are lost overboard and their bodies are never found. But this is altogether different this morning. This is a major incident with a vessel that's capsized and more than 30 people in the freezing water there. It will, by the very nature of having to do a Channel operation and to get the rescue services to those people, it takes quite a significant time. Clearly, if there were some fishing boats a bit nearer, they were able to pluck some of the people from the water, but it will have taken many minutes before the border force vessels, the naval vessels, and the lifeboats and helicopters were able to get to the scene. Minutes which could make the difference between life and death. And sadly, the information that we're receiving from our sources is that there may well have been fatalities as a result of this ongoing incident. Clearly, the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary will be kept up to speed with what has happened here. This comes less than a day after Rishi Sunak stood up in the House of Commons and delivered what he said was a multi-pronged plan that they hope will cut down on the number of small boats coming across the channel, including the creation of a small boats operational command to better bring together Border Force, the other rescue agencies, the National Crime Agency, Coast Guard, and alike to better coordinate their operations in the channel.
Yeah, and Mark, look, clearly a desperate situation and a human tragedy unfolding, and thank you for bringing us the latest lines on that. But I suppose it very much chimes with what the Prime Minister was saying yesterday, that this is a complex moral issue, because whilst we don't want, and to quote him, our generosity to be abused by people coming here illegally, it is often the people smuggling gangs who are profiteering, charging people huge sums of money and putting them in extremely dangerous situations, as is being borne out today with the capsizing of this migrant boat.
Yeah, the thing is, for the people smugglers, this is a highly lucrative business. They're charging at least £3,000 a head for those going on these boats, and often these boats will be full of 40 to 50 people. So you do the math. You know, in any given week, if the temperature or the weather conditions in the channel are conducive to small boat crossings, then they are making many millions of pounds each week. So it's very difficult to smash such a criminal operation when it is so tempting in terms of the profits that can be made. And it's much more organised than it ever was. When it first started to become an issue 3 years ago, you know, the boats were much smaller. The numbers on the boats, by virtue of the fact that the boats were smaller, was only ever a maximum of a dozen at a time that were coming across. Now we are seeing, as I say, very regularly upwards of 40 people. And on this particular boat, I'm told 30, may have been 35. The numbers clearly will have to be determined once the operation has concluded. But as with the tragedy 13 months ago, where we talk about 27 dead, actually they think there were more people on board that vessel, but the true numbers are not known, because those bodies are washed out to sea and never recovered. And it may be the same with this incident. We have to hope that if there are fatalities, there are just a very small number of fatalities, and they've been able to get to those in the water in time to be able to help them and warm them up. They will no doubt be suffering from the effects of the cold hypothermia and the like. But it may be that we're dealing with that very significant tragedy here. As I say, that main accident and emergency hospital in Kent, in Ashford, has been told to clear the decks effectively to be prepared for a very significant influx of patients.
Mark, so it appears you've broken this story. That's excellent work on that front. But there's a feeling of inevitability about this, isn't there? I mean, a lot of people have been warning about this, especially at this time of year. And how do you think this will add to this political debate that's happening today across all the front pages? How will this shove those debates along?
Well, there will be a lot of soul searching. Of course there will. There always is after tragedies like this. The difficulty you have, look, it is treacherous trying to cross this busy shipping lane at the best of times, even in flat calm conditions. You're in a flimsy boat with a small, not very powerful outboard motor, crossing, as I say, shipping lanes where big vessels can't just steer around you. They're going to plough in to your path if you happen to cross their path. So it's very dangerous at the best of times. Add to that the winter months where the winds pick up, that depending on the way that the wind is blowing, can really churn up the waves. Then you get the winter fogs that descend on the channel as well, which mean that the big vessels can't see these boats, and these boats can't see the big vessels. So that, of course, can add to the complications out there. And even if you're not struck by one of these big container ships that passes, they generate, by virtue of the fact that these are massive vessels, huge wakes that can capsize a boat. And that may be what we've seen here, because the wave conditions, we're told, aren't too bad in the channel today, but there are, very significant risks from these big wakes created by the container ships and the oil tankers as they pass by, and that would potentially have been enough to capsize a vessel, which, remember, of course, you've seen them coming in, Martin. They are full to the gunnels of people just sitting on the edges of these vessels. It doesn't take much at all to capsize a vessel like this and for everybody to end up in the water. Another very worrying aspect that I saw just recently in terms of the numbers coming across and how prepared or otherwise they are. I talk about the people smugglers being more sophisticated in the way that they operate and the supply lines. Well, they have been, as a matter of course, providing the migrants with life jackets. They're not very good life jackets, but at least there's something. However, and it may be due to law enforcement activities disrupting their supply chains, we saw a number of boats that have been intercepted that had tire inner tubes being used as makeshift life jackets in those vessels, because clearly they weren't able to get life jackets to those migrants who were on board these vessels. Now, a car inner tube is no substitute for a life jacket that you could wear and fasten, because when you're in freezing cold water, okay, the inner tube may float, but you just can't keep a hold of it because you just can't get a grip. So they're very, very dangerous. We don't know. It would be speculation to, try and guess at what they were actually wearing. They may well have been wearing life jackets. And in the first instance, it's actually going to be the cold water that is the real risk factor here anyway, I would imagine. But as you say, those details will come out in the fullness of time. I would expect that if this is the significant tragic event that we expect it to be, that we can expect that there will be a COBRA meeting of that crisis cabinet in Downing Street involving the Home Secretary, the Border Force lead, potentially chaired by the Prime Minister himself. There is no doubt that they are being kept up to speed with the event that's unfolding in the Channel. We knew really, as the reports came through to me at 4 a.m. this morning, that this was actually something quite significant that was unfolding, because although it is a sort of tactic that the people smugglers tell the migrants to do, which is dial 999 for the Coast Guard when you're halfway across the Channel, you don't get a response, which is a number of Border Force vessels, the Royal Navy, 2 lifeboats, 2 Coast Guard helicopters, French boats. You know that this is something out of the ordinary, and so it would seem as the hours pass, more details are becoming available. It is sadly looking like a very significant tragic event that is unfolding in the Channel.
OK, Home and Security Editor Mark White, we will put you straight back on air just as soon as you have any more updates for us. But for now, thank you very much. That news that a migrant boat has capsized in the Channel under cover of darkness overnight into freezing conditions. And it is understood, as Mark was telling us, that there have been a number of fatalities. So keep a close eye on that developing picture for you this morning.
Tragic story. OK, rail strikes continue today, bringing train service to a standstill across the country.
Well, GB News' Alice Porter joins us now live from a cab in North London to tell us how it is impacting on the roads. And I suppose it's either going to be a good day for cabbies because they'll be picking up lots of extra work, or they're going to be fed up because they'll be stuck in gridlock, not getting anywhere.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both of those problems. I mean, we've been going through central London right now over rush hour, and I have to say we keep stopping and starting, and we're really seeing the impact of the rail strikes on our roads. But the man who knows all about that is Asher Moses, who's the CEO of Sherbet, an electric cab company. Asher, thanks for letting me firstly come into one of your lovely cabs first thing in the morning. Just tell us, how do the rail strikes impact the roads in London from what you're seeing with your company?
Well, as you can see, there's two things. On one hand, there's great demand from customers who want to book our services. On the other hand, you can see we can't get to our customers because it takes time for us to navigate the traffic that are on the streets. You can see today people have used their cars. Rather, the objective is to leave your cars at home and use, the transport infrastructure that we have, but we can't rely on it. So you can see the streets all cluttered and blocked today, and more difficult for our drivers to get from point A to point B.
Oh, I mean, someone watching this or listening to this might be thinking, gosh, any taxi driver might be rubbing his hands with glee and thinking, I'm going to be getting some more passengers today, but you're saying that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely not. It's so much harder to navigate the traffic to keep our customers moving around London. London is their economy, not only for London, the capital, it's the economy for the whole country. And it's so important, especially Sherbet, the electric taxi company, that we move our CEOs from point A to point B without clogging up traffic in London.
And as a businessman, you're obviously operating a number of cabs in London, and I'm sure struggling with cost of living issues, and I'm sure having to balance issues to do with wages as well, in the same way that we're seeing why these rail strikes are happening. I mean, what do you think about the strikes that are happening at the moment?
Well, I can't comment for the strikers. They are all important people of London. Having come through COVID, having come through, the Omicron, having come through 4 leadership governments, and now we're coming to the end of the year, it's all about timing. I encourage our drivers, or the Sherbet electric drivers, not to demonstrate inconvenience, to win over our customers by demonstrating convenience, giving them free rides whilst others are demonstrating, in order to tell them and win their hearts rather than demonstrating convenience. And I think it's very important for our economy to work together to come out of this recession glooming that we have ahead of us, and really start working together and keep London moving. It's more important.
Well, look, thank you very much for letting me come this morning to sit in your lovely cab. I have to say it's a pleasure to move around the traffic with you. I have to say that it's not been too bad, but I think it could get worse as the week progresses, unfortunately. Of course, these train strikes have an enormous impact on the roads in London.
OK, Alice Porter with that. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, because it's all steamy in there, we can't really see out the window. Otherwise, you can't even really tell you're in a cab, Alice. But we take your word for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's 8:19. Let's bring you up to date with all the rest of today's top stories.
So the Office for National Statistics says the rate of consumer prices index inflation fell to 10.7 last month. That's dropped from 11.1% in October. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt's called inflation the #1 enemy, and getting it under control is his top priority.
And thousands of people have been left without power as snow and ice continue to hit parts of the UK. It comes as the Scottish Government has declared a major incident for Shetland yesterday after almost 3,000 homes lost electricity. Meanwhile, the Met Office has extended a yellow warning for snow and ice in northern Scotland and north-east England until Friday. Green Badge tourist guide Paula Moss is in Shetland. She says residents are in survival mode.
On either side of my property, just north of Lerwick, there are power lines down all over the place. The lines just couldn't take the weight of the snow that was clinging to them. Everything that's not essential has closed down and cancelled. Yeah, it's just for the safety of everybody. It really is quite treacherous out there.
UK authorities have been involved in the rescue operation overnight after a migrant boat capsized in the Channel, throwing dozens of people into the water. Border Force, lifeboats and a Royal Navy patrol vessel have been called to reports of a migrant boat in distress off the coast of Kent. GB News understands there may be fatalities and that a number of people have been airlifted from the water.
On some light news now, and a new royal photograph has been released of the Prince and Princess of Wales and their wonderful children today. It will feature on their Royal Highnesses Christmas card this year.
The image was captured by the photographer Matt Porteous earlier this year and shows the Prince and Princess with their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk.
Well, our royal reporter Cameron Walker joins us now. Now, Cameron, we've been saying all morning, it looks wonderful, but it doesn't look very Christmassy, does it?
It doesn't, but it's certainly brightening up these cold, dark days, doesn't it? It was taken earlier this year, as we understand it, on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, and it's one of the rare official photographs, actually, we get each year of the 3 Wales children. Of course, it's an exchange for the media and the paparazzi, leaving them alone to get on with a private life at school and, you know, in their downtime, as it were. Which is, I'm sorry to bring it back to Harry and Meghan, but it is in contrast, and it's a reminder that Harry and Meghan once said one of the reasons they left the UK and a reason they were worried about staying in the UK was for what Harry said was they had to offer up their children for what they saw as intrusive public consumption. So clearly there's a bit of a contrast here that when was the last time you saw paparazzi shots, for example, of George, Charlotte or Louis in British newspapers? The answer is you haven't, and that's what Harry and Meghan have been alluding to.
Yeah, it's the first time we've seen the kids, I suppose, since the funeral of Her Majesty the Queen. Just the day before she died, we saw the picture of them starting at Lambrook School. It was such a shock, wasn't it? They were all there together as a family, and then Prince William, I think that afternoon or the next day, flying up to Balmoral to be at Her Majesty's bedside. But because this picture was taken in summer, this was actually before all of that. So we have seen the kids since then, but it's a little glimpse back in time.
Yes, we have. It's very rare, actually. It was a one-off occasion that we saw them at Ludgrove School because it was the first day of their new school. Of course, they had moved from Kensington Palace to Berkshire, near Windsor Castle. And you're right, this photograph was taken when they were still the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and their 3 children before Her Majesty the Queen passed away. And now, of course, it's the Prince and Princess of Wales. But as you said, Isabel, it's coming the day before the final 3 episodes of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's Netflix documentary is released. And it looks like, if you read the Mirror this morning, there are reports, there are claims in there that Harry is not going to stop with this Netflix documentary. He is in talks with American network CBS to perhaps do a promotional interview for his book, Spare, which is coming out in January, with Gayle King, who is seen as an ally of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. She went to Meghan's baby shower in 2019, if you remember.
Well, Cameron Walker, thanks for lifting the mood on this morning. By the way, next time, let's get the memo on the suits and ties. We're looking basically the same.
Fashion.
Anyway, thank you very much.
We've got to take a break now. After that, we'll be speaking to the Shadow Attorney General. That is, of course, Emily Thornberry. We'll be talking about the Royal Mail workers joining the winter of walkouts. See you in a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. A migrant boat has capsized in the English Channel, throwing dozens of people into the water. GB News understands there may have been some fatalities. Well, joining us now is Emily Thornberry, Labour MP for Islington South and Finsbury, and of course also Shadow Attorney General. A very good morning to you, Ms Thornberry. Look, a very serious situation unfolding in the Channel as we speak. First of all, your reaction to that?
It's very early to say exactly what has happened. I really do hope that it hasn't been a capsize of a migrant boat, and I really do hope that there haven't been fatalities. Clearly, people won't survive very long in the water at all at this time of year. So it's a very worrying situation indeed.
It comes less than 24 hours, of course, since the Prime Minister outlined his 5-point plan to try and tackle what is quite clearly a very complex and very serious challenge facing the country at the moment. Sir Keir Starmer calling it gimmickry. I want to know what Labour's serious plan is to stop situations like this unfolding in the Channel.
Sure. I mean, let me just start with the gimmickry, because all you have to do is look at the various things which they have claimed that they're going to do, and it just doesn't make sense. You just say, well, that sounds good, but how's that going to work? And it doesn't. You know, so, for example, the Prime Minister has said that he's going to double the number of people that will be making decisions. That simply isn't enough anyway to be able to clear a backlog. He then says he's going to clear the backlog in a year, but he's only defining the backlog as cases running up to June this year, not the cases since then. And he says he's going to clear it in a year, which will mean that by the end of next year, he'll have 18 months worth of backlog, even if what he's saying is right, which it isn't.
So how would you clear it then? I'm none the wiser about what you would do. It's very easy to say you don't think they're going to be able to double the numbers.
So the truth is that the asylum and immigration system in the UK has broken, and the Conservatives have broken it over the last 12 years.
So what would you do?
There has always been delays, and so we would be making sure that we have people properly trained. We would never have allowed the situation to arise whereby cases were taking as long as they have. We would have made sure that there were proper decisions being made. We would have made sure that we kept an eye on just how bad the backlog was being. We would make sure that we were making decisions in a timely way so that the British public weren't having to pay for people to stay in hotels for over a year. And what's more, the people who are here claiming asylum, they're having to stand waiting, holding their breath, waiting for their lives to start because no decision has been made because it has simply taken too long. And then on top of that, you have to make sure that you're talking properly to the...
tomorrow,
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that...
properly trained. Well, that's certainly what the Prime Minister has said in outlining that he wants to double the numbers.
What I'm saying is that the system has been broken over a long period of time, and it has been allowed to fall to pieces, and there has not been a serious grip being taken of the situation.
Okay.
So it gets worse and worse and worse. And you then say to me, oh, but if you were in power tomorrow, what would your solution be? My solution would be that we would never have allowed the situation to arise in the first place, as indeed can be proved by the fact that it was nothing like as bad as this when we were in government. But over the last 12 years, the Tories have slowly and systematically broken the system.
OK, look, there was a Savanta poll out yesterday. It was very favourable to your party. It saw Labour winning a 314-seat majority if a general election was held today. So what would Labour do about this problem today? I'm still none the wiser.
OK. No, all right. So what we would do is first of all, we would be tackling the problem upstream, which would be we would be looking at how we can have a proper agreement with the French when it comes to a return of people. We would make sure that we were policing the border properly. We would also be looking upstream in terms of dealing with the criminal gangs. We would be making a real effort in relation to that. You have to remember that whilst the Conservatives are now talking to the French, it wasn't very long ago that Priti Patel was banned from meetings with the French government because they had been so insulted by her behaviour. Okay. It wasn't that long ago, only the last Prime Minister, which was only like last month, when she said that she couldn't be sure whether the President of France was a friend or foe. That isn't really the way that you can kind of get a deal with the French. So a new government, a fresh start, would certainly help with improving relationships with the French, and we would be able to work with them better when it comes to that. So that's number one. Okay. And then at the other end, we would be making sure that the decisions were made in a timely way and not in the way in which the government has allowed this to fall into... I mean, the whole thing has fallen to pieces under this government. We would have a fresh start, and we would make sure that we had people trained up. We would make sure that we had people who are there in order to make proper decisions and get on with it, rather than the current situation where I have people coming to my surgery who have been waiting for more than a year for a decision to be made, and it's simply not fair on anyone.
OK, I want to turn our attention to the situation with the strikes, multiple strikes going on across the course of the week. Has Mick Lynch lost it, do you think?
I think that it's not a question of anybody losing it one way or the other. I have been warning for months about what it might be, where we might end up with this. What I was concerned about was making sure that all sides got round a table. Any strike is a failure. Both sides need to be able to compromise, and the government plays a pivotal role when it comes to public services in ensuring that all sides do get round the table and that proper agreements are come to. I am more than disappointed to hear stories about the Transport Secretary interfering at the last minute when it looked like we were going to get a deal and started talking about driver-only trains, which was not part of the negotiations before then. I'm more than disappointed when I hear the Secretary of State for Health inviting the nurses in and saying we can talk about anything apart from pay. This is not the way to go about things. A proper grown-up government would be there ensuring that there were proper talks happening and facilitating them and not playing party politics with it, not thinking that in some perverse way they might get some political advantage from the strikes going ahead. Nobody wants these strikes. Nobody wants it. But you need to be able to find solutions. And you look at the private sector, there have been many strikes happening and many disputes that have been dealt with in an entirely pragmatic way. From McVitie's biscuits to ports, there are deals being done because the employers and the unions are sitting down together and discussing it properly.
Well, you criticised the Health Secretary, of course, the Shadow Health Secretary this week, outraging the British Medical Association, trying to wage war on NHS staff. But I just want to know whether or not you think actually the government, as custodian...
Well, I don't think that's right. I think that characterisation is simply wrong.
OK, well, that was his own words in the article in The Telegraph that Wes Streeting wrote on Sunday, that he wanted to get value for money from the NHS.
He was waging war on the BMA?
There was a huge row between the BMA and Wes Streeting. Do you deny that?
What I would say is that the people who work in the health sector want a Labour government. And they want a Labour government because under a Labour government, the National Health Service is properly looked after. Under a Labour government, there aren't strikes. There weren't any strikes when we were in charge of the health service. They want to work with us to improve the health service, and we want to work with them. And yes, there will be things that we will say that are wrong with the health service, and there will be disagreements. But quite frankly, there will be a lot of agreement because people who work in the health service know that things are not perfect, and they have been, and there are a number of things need to be be changed. And we're more than happy and we want to work with them, hopefully, if we get into government and are given the opportunity to serve the public.
Look, a final point, and I am aware and conscious that you are stood out there in what looks like snow in Westminster, but I just want to ask...
It's very cold.
It looks very cold.
But it's not as bad as for me as it is for your cameraman.
I'm sure it's freezing, but listen, I just want to ask you, because we did ask you to come on specifically to talk about the ONS inflation figures. They came out better than expected today, down from 11.1% to 10.7%. And I suppose in many ways this relates, doesn't it, to the strike issue. A lot of people will think actually the government were right to play quite hardball on all of this, because the Chancellor vowing this morning to try and help halve inflation by the end of next year. The unions have simply overplayed their hands, haven't they?
So I would say that certainly it's good news that the inflation figure this month is not as bad as it was last month. But it's still the second worst inflation figure that we have had for 40 years. So let's not put out the bunting yet. I hope that this will be the beginning of a downward move of inflation. It needs to go down a very long way. And in the meantime, of course, with inflation being over 10%, a lot of people out there are concerned about the way in which their wages are being eroded. And what you need to do is you need to have a negotiation, and particularly people in the public sector whose wages have been frozen for a number of years, they want to negotiate a pay settlement that takes account of the fact that their wages have not gone up over a number of years and currently are not going up in line with inflation. These things need to be negotiated. It needs to be done with a calm head and without people chasing headlines.
Emily Thornberry, Shadow Attorney General, enormous thanks for withstanding the weather and talking to us this morning. Thank you. Well, let's get more now on the story of a migrant boat that's capsized in the English Channel overnight. We understand dozens of people were thrown into the water. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, joins us now with all the very latest on this. And Mark, we understand there may well, given the conditions, have been some fatalities.
Yes, the information that we've received.
A few problems establishing comms there with our Home and Security editor, Mark White. As you can understand, developing story, and he is battling all of that for us.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Mark. Pleased to hear you. Carry on. You were just giving us an update on whether or not there were fatalities.
Yes, the information we've received is that there are a number of fatalities. Now, it's around 6 hours after this incident first unfolded. The very latest information we're receiving is this is still very much an active search and rescue operation, and that a Coast Guard helicopter, one of two flying over the area, has spotted another two people in the water. Now, we don't know the condition of those individuals, whether other vessels on the ground have been able to get to them as yet. But bearing in mind that, as I say, 6 hours have elapsed since this boat capsized and these people were thrown into the water, clearly anyone in the water for such a period of time, the outlook is not going to be good at all, sadly. We understand that a number of fatalities have already been taken back to Dover Harbour. The main hospital in Ashford, the accident and emergency room there, has been cleared of all non-emergency personnel that are in there, or those patients, I should say, who are less seriously injured, so that they can deal with the casualties that are being brought from the English Channel to them. And you can imagine that, hypothermia will be probably uppermost in terms of the symptoms and conditions of the patients that they're having to deal with. But the very latest is that this is, according to sources telling me, still very much an active search and rescue operation, some 6 hours after it began, with reports of another two people who've just been spotted in the water in the English Channel.
Mark, well done on breaking this story. You're leading the way very much on this. Thank you for your input this morning, and keep us updated as the morning goes on. Well, after the break, we'll go to the papers with David Mellor and Amy Cameron. See you soon.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations. for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:44. It's time to go through the papers now. And joining us this morning, the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, David Mellerin Fine Fettle, and environmental campaigner Amy Cameron. Now, before
Equally fine.
Equally fine, yeah.
Thank you. In the interest of balance.
More so.
But you'd expect her to be in Fine Fettle. She's young. I'm old. I am clapped out.
Now, before we move into the insides of the papers, breaking story, of course, Mark White, Home and Security Editor of GB News, leading the way on this story. Amy, it appears there's been another tragedy in the Channel.
Yeah, this story is horrible. I think as we're hearing, I think we don't know a lot of the details, but it does look like a boat is capsized and there have been fatalities. I think, Martin, you were sort of touching on this earlier. I think it doesn't really matter what your politics are on this. All of us agree that people should not be making this incredibly dangerous journey and not through the winter. I think stories like this just, I hope to some extent, kind of remind people of how desperate a lot of the people are that are making this journey. You don't put yourself onto a flimsy boat in freezing cold conditions if you aren't desperate. And I think this does remind us of that. Obviously, we're waiting to hear more information on the story, but I think our hopes are obviously that the fatalities are not too many. It's heartbreaking to hear about something like this. We know what the weather is like outside. Just scary stuff.
David?
Well, I mean, whether people should be desperate enough to do that, I take issue with, because they're in a safe country, France. But obviously it is a tragedy. One is very sad. And what makes me most sad, you know, all the things that politicians say that don't happen. One of the things they say is that we are after the people smugglers, but they don't get them. No. They don't get them. As a result, I mean, who on earth in their right mind would leave a beach in France in a dead of night in weather like this? Yes, I mean, one can say they must be desperate, but why are people desperate to come to this country? When, you know, is it so much better than France? I don't think it is.
And David, Isabel cross-examined Emily Thornberry moments ago and asked Labour what their plans were on this. And it sounded like the same as the Tories.
Exactly.
Let's do a deal with the French. Let's stop them leaving. Let's process asylum seekers.
The same old BS, and basically not really effective. But you see, when you're in opposition, you want to exploit the failure of the government whilst being very cautious about what you say about what you're going to do. And this opposition is particularly cautious because they haven't got any real policies that are any different or worth talking about.
OK, well, Amy, let's move inside the papers now. And you've chosen a story on childcare from The Guardian. New homes could be obliged to include childcare facilities.
Yeah, I really wanted to do this story because I actually think there's such an interesting conversation around childcare in the UK. And I think it's a subject which actually would be hugely popular cross-party, as we've seen in this piece of legislation. So this is about an amendment that Stella Creasy has put down that says that housing developers should be, as part of the local infrastructure levy that they can be charged when they build new developments, they can be charged this levy to help make sure that those developments provide the support structures and the infrastructure that people need to live.
This happens in places like Sweden. This is a very Scandinavian take on childcare.
Yeah, and so right now, UK childcare, this will be familiar to so many of your viewers, I think. Childcare in the UK is amongst the most expensive in the world. And it has huge knock-on implications for our economy, for getting people back into work. There was some really interesting polling an organisation called Pregnant Then Screwed did this year, I think, which said almost half of women thought they might have to leave their jobs because of the cost of childcare. 1 in 4 parents are skipping meals because of the crippling cost of childcare. And I always just think that childcare is an issue. It just seems like such an open goal for any of the political parties to properly grapple with. Anyone who's got young children knows how exorbitantly expensive childcare is. And I don't understand why it's not given more political precedence.
And what are the Conservatives saying on this? Because I know, obviously, this is a Stella Creasy idea, but it seems, I mean, what's not to like about this? It's fabulous for communities, fabulous for working parents, you know.
It's not that radical a thought. For years now, it has been accepted that if you're going to build, you know, a new estate in some area, you have to make, I think it's called a Section 106 agreement. You do a Section 106 agreement with the local authority where you agree to make a capital contribution towards the cost of education and 1 or 2 things like that. And all that's being said here is that that should also embrace childcare. Yeah. Well, yes, why not?
I agree this isn't super radical. I think this is kind of playing in the margins, but what I'm interested in is the bigger picture, and neither political party, I think, are properly grappling with what solutions to this would look like. OK,
I'd like to get back to David now, our spokesperson on women's issues.
Yes.
Because there's a story in the Times you've chosen.
Oh, this was my request.
Yes. Well, I'm happy to say anything about it. Jo Lumley's been a great friend of ours for many, many years, and comes to dinner and all the rest of it, and endures me. Very good of her, and probably prefers Penny, but she endures me. But basically, and her husband, of course, is a professional musician. But the thing about Jo, she's not a fluffy sort of blonde bombshell with no opinions. She's got very strong opinions about things, and only lets herself loose on her opinions from time to time. And this one, she really deplores women becoming victims. She basically thinks too highly of women to think that women are automatic victims, and thinks that women have more capability to affect the world that bits of the world they don't like than sometimes, frankly, rather patronising men assume.
And another
it's just a nice point.
Another thing that she spoke out about, which is back in the news this week, is that she also was saying she likes being wolf whistled. She said that before. Well, and that's back in the news.
Well, let's bring in
bless her.
into this
No,
debate, shall we?
I'd like to hear more from David.
Well, I just say one thing on wolf whistling, which I do not approve of. I've never wolf whistled.
No women.
Anybody, and I try to stop women wolf whistling me. If you believe that, you'll believe anything now. But the thing is, she's, bless her heart, should want to say this, she's 75, and yet she looks great. So, wolf whistle away and Joe will be thrilled.
Well, look, Amy, I have to say, women are tough. Women are incredibly tough. So she's right on that.
Yeah, I think, interestingly, everything that David has said, maybe other than the wolf whistling, but I agree with. I think women are phenomenally tough. And I think what has changed is that women are kind of demonstrating that toughness, not by kind of shutting up and putting up, as I think they did in the past, but by coming together and saying this isn't acceptable. And that does take toughness. Joanna Lumley in this story talks about slapping away hands that were trying to grope her. And I think what women are doing now is saying, absolutely not. That needs to stop, and we're coming together and raising our voices around that.
So you don't accept that this victim culture of sort of everyone needs counselling and everyone's traumatised by everything. I have to say, I do think there is a touch of that going on. Not necessarily unique to women. I think perhaps personally my own view would be it's the sort of snowflake generation.
I think there's two things there, though, right? I mean, I think we'd like to put aside one bit on the counselling, because I think that we know we're in the grips of a mental health crisis, and actually lots of people are struggling with real mental health issues. I actually have been really excited by the way women are raising our voices, and I think people are just saying it's not acceptable anymore, the way that women used to be treated in the workplace. There's more of us now, and we are able to kind of come together and speak out. It's one of the few places, I think in lots of ways social media has been terrible for women, especially women in the public eye, but in lots of ways what it helped people to do was to realise that their plight was being shared by many, and that's how you build strength.
Would you mind if I went back to our spokesperson on women's issues, David?
Thank you.
There's another story in the...
Not often people request my opinions, but they're not obliged
I can just hear Penny choking on her cornflakes as she watches.
And this is, David, the Cambridge Dictionary definition of woman is raising eyebrows.
Well, I think that you feel that the Cambridge Dictionary should have a bit more common sense. They now define a woman as anyone who identifies as female, regardless of their sex at birth. See, I have issues with that, not least, going back to my days when I was the Minister of Prison. I wasn't in a prison, but I was the Minister for it. I mean, maybe I should have been in it. But the point is, men are able to say they are a woman and go to a woman's prison, but they retain, if one might not be too indelicate about it, all their accoutrements. And I think if you're going to be a woman, you should have your accoutrement and want to be treated with. Have your accoutrements removed. No, but that's what
your take on it.
That used to be the requirement.
I think it's interesting. I think we also shouldn't mischaracterise what's happening here. They've added a sort of secondary definition, and what the Cambridge Dictionary tries to do is keep up with the way that language is being used. So it doesn't set the rules, it responds to the way that language and linguistics have always evolved. You had Emily Thornberry on earlier, and I think she spoke to this actually incredibly well, the trans issue earlier this year, I think, which was to recognise that, yes, the majority of women are women like myself, like yourself, Isabel, who were born women at birth. There is a small number of women who were assigned the wrong gender at birth, and they were horribly unhappy and were marginalised, and I think they deserve to be treated with compassion and respect. I frankly, I don't care what's up your skirt. That's your business.
We should say the definition does caveat, although some people may have been born a different gender. I think that's an important point that they put in there. Anyway, we have to leave it there. I'm being told we have to wrap. Amy, David, it's been a pleasure. Not a dull moment between the pair of you. Come back soon. Thank you.
OK, after the break, we'll have more on the latest from the channel with Nigel Farage, and we'll speak to the General Secretary of the CWU, Dave Ward, first. But here's the weather.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Some of you waking up to a covering of snow in places. It's a frosty, icy start again, and we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Here's the big picture. Low pressure to the north and to the southwest. This one is trying to introduce milder air, but it's not really succeeding. We stay in the cold air for at least the next couple of days. A couple of weather fronts enhancing the snow showers. Northern Scotland, down across parts of eastern England. We saw some wet weather overnight across the southwest. Bit of snow in places here and potentially quite icy first thing this morning. Ice is a risk wherever we've had showers through the course of the night. But for most, it's just going to be a fine, crisp, cold winter's day with temperatures just about getting above freezing for most of us, 2 or 3 the high. Feeling colder in the wind along the south coast and across northern Scotland, where the snow showers will continue on and off through the day, through the night, and indeed for most of tomorrow. We'll see a few more of these snow showers coming across parts of eastern England again overnight, potentially therefore turning things icy, and that is also a risk across Northern Ireland. The wet weather in the south just about staying away from the south coast, but could bring further rain to parts of the Channel Isles. Again, most places just clear overnight, and therefore it will be another very cold start to the morning. Again, you'll be scraping the car windscreen once more. But again, for most, tomorrow will be another bright, crisp, frosty winter's day with plenty of sunshine. But there will be more sleet and snow showers across northeastern parts of England and across northern Scotland, the odd one too for Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, again, generally just fine and sunny with temperatures still below average, 2 or 3 degrees at best, and feeling colder in that wind, which will be strong at times along the far north and the east coast. Another cold one on Friday, but changes on the way. Turning wetter through this weekend. That could bring some snow for a time, but then it is going to turn milder. Bye for now.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
A small boat has capsized in the English Channel and a rescue operation is underway.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. It's Wednesday, the 14th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Isabel, Webster and Martin Daubney. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
And GB News understands that there are a number of fatalities in the English Channel after a small boat has capsized. The Maritime and Coast Guard Agency said HM Coast Guard is currently working with RNLI, the Royal Navy and Border Forces, and an air ambulance has also been sent to the scene.
This comes less than 24 hours after the Prime Minister said migrants who try to reach the country illegally will be banned from claiming asylum. Unveiling a new plan to tackle small boat crossings, he pledged to abolish the backlog of over 90,000 asylum claims by the end of next year.
And the government will hold another COBRA meeting today to discuss mitigating the effects of strikes as Royal Mail workers join the wave of walkouts. We'll speak to CWU boss Dave Ward in the next few moments.
And the Prince and Princess of Wales have released their official Christmas card image, which shows the couple holding hands with their 3 children on a sunny day in the Sandringham estate.
And Christmas with the Olivers. We're catching up with mother and daughter duo Andy and Maquita Oliver as they tell us what they're planning for their big day.
And we love to hear from you. Get in touch the usual way. You know what to do, via Twitter or email. So our breaking news this morning, a migrant boat has capsized in the English Channel, throwing dozens of people into the water.
The Coast Guard said it is coordinating a search and rescue operation, and GB News understands that there may be a number of fatalities.
Well, GB News presenter Nigel Farage joins us on the line. Good morning to you, Nigel. Look, first of all, your reaction to what quite clearly is a human tragedy unfolding in the Channel now for the second time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed it hasn't happened before, quite frankly. I mean, this incident was reported at 3:40 this morning, so it would have been very, very dark out there. You've got 2 risks. Number one, the boats themselves are liable to deflate. They're so poorly constructed. And secondly, of course, you've got collision risk in what are some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. So, yes, it's a very, very nasty incident. But I'm surprised we haven't seen more of it, frankly. At the moment, the last I've heard is definitely 3 fatalities. But I suppose the concern is that if now, nearly 6 hours after the initial report, there are still bodies in the water, well, we'll have to see what happens. All I can say right now is it doesn't look very good.
So, Nigel, politically, this is all over the front pages already. How do you think this tragedy will force the hand of Rishi Sunak into coming to terms with this?
Well, what he ought to do is to say to people very clearly that unless we stop people crossing, there will be more and more people that die. But I don't think of itself it makes much difference. I listened and I read what Rishi Sunak had to say yesterday. I mean, frankly, it's no different to what Boris Johnson said and not much different to what David Cameron was saying about people who illegally come to Britain. It's all well and good, him saying, if you come via this route, you won't get asylum. Well, I'm afraid what you're going to have to do is get rid of the Human Rights Act of 1998, the Modern Slavery Act of 2015, and not take orders from the European Court of Human Rights. Now, if Rishi Sunak had said those 3 things yesterday, I might take him seriously. But it's a couple of times a year we get a Conservative Home Secretary or Prime Minister. They make these big speeches. The Tory-supporting newspapers say, isn't it marvellous? And nothing ever changes. I can't see it changing in the short term, I have to say.
Yeah, look, Nigel, it was just 13 months ago when 27 migrants drowned in November 2021. It was the worst maritime disaster in the Channel in over 30 years. Rishi Sunak, obviously 7 weeks into the job. Do you think that he will feel, or should feel, in your view, responsible? Is this a failure of government to sort this crisis out?
Well, absolutely. And apart from people dying, I mean, we got the shocking news last night that 70 children who've crossed the English Channel have gone missing from hotels in Sussex. 39 have gone missing from hotels in Kent. So whichever way you look at this, there are some dreadful things happening to people crossing the Channel. And we should be really hanging our heads in shame at much of what is going on. But nobody has got the guts to stand up to the fact that we've got legislation in place in the United Kingdom that makes this impossible to deal with. We have to change the law. It's as simple as that.
OK, Nigel, so we had Emily Thornberry on the show earlier. She was saying the answer is another deal with the French.
I listened to that with great interest. I mean, look, remember one thing. Over 300,000 people have come across the Mediterranean this year into the European Union. So what we see across the English Channel is the knock-on effects, in many cases, of those who come across the Mediterranean. Not the case for the Albanians, but the case for many, many others. France has no interest in doing a deal to take everybody back. They will not sign up to a deal. And frankly, the only way this works is either Rwanda on a massive scale, or we literally take people back, put them back on the French beaches from which they landed. And the French may not like it, but why would you pay a trafficker €5,000 if you thought if the British picked you up, you'd be taken back to where you came from? So whatever we do here, we've got to change our own legislation internationally. In the short term, we'll make ourselves unpopular, just as the Australians did 10 years ago when they towed the boats back to Indonesia. This needs firm, decisive action, and that's the only way, I'd say to Emily Thornberry, the only way you break the trafficking gang's model is by people not paying them anymore because they know they can't cross that stretch of water.
Very much indeed for your take on that unfolding situation in the Channel, with your confirmation there of at least 3 fatalities after the SOS was made at around 3 o'clock this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. He'll be back with his programme, of course, this evening, and we're keeping a close eye on those developments in the Channel. As we were saying a little bit earlier in the programme, major air-sea rescue operation, 6 hours underway now. 2 lifeboats involved, Royal Navy, 2 Coast Guard helicopters, and Ashford Hospital in Kent being told to clear the A&E for multiple casualties. We'll keep you posted on all the latest lines there.
OK, well, Royal Mail workers begin striking again today, joining the wave of winter walkouts. Well, joining us now is the General Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, Dave Ward. Good morning, Dave. Let's just put into perspective, if we could, what you want from the government offered you. Could we start with that, please?
Well, look, this dispute is about probably the biggest attack on any group of workers that we've seen in the UK for decades. It's about their jobs going forward in the future, and it's about the services that we provide to the public. It is about pay, but we believe we can find a resolution to pay as part of the dispute. But the big issues that we're facing now are the reality of the attacks on jobs. If I could explain that what Royal Mail are asking us to accept and our members to accept is, whilst they go about sacking thousands upon thousands of postal workers, they want to bring in new workers, self-employed owner-drivers. They want to bring in workers on 20% less pay terms and conditions. And they also want to retain around 11,000 agency workers. And what we're saying is that no company who has a workforce that is so dedicated, like the Royal Mail employees who have a special relationship with customers up and down the country, no company would treat its workers like that. So jobs and the service. On the service, if I could explain that Royal Mail want our members to start up to 3 hours later in the day, we're saying that means that they will abandon the AM delivery period. We don't think that's a viable business plan for the future. So that's why our members are out on strike today.
Well, specifically on the issue of pay, you've been offered 9% over 18 months. I understand you're demanding 10% plus. But with inflation figures out today, do you not think you're overplaying your hand? You're asking effectively for more than inflation in the coming year.
Well, I've already said to you that the major issues are actually jobs and the future of the service, and you need to accept that and put that to the company, rather than just reading out what they're saying. So let me be absolutely clear on pay. What we said to the company a couple of days back is that we would accept 9% if it was truly 9%, and that means the full value of 9% on basic pay. The company are not offering 9%. If they were, I'm saying live on air now, we would settle that part of the dispute. We've made that clear to them. We put that in writing, and also as part of that, by the way, we asked them if they were to confirm that, along with some job security commitments that we've spoken about, then we would have suspended today's strike. The company didn't even want to come into the room to discuss that, and it really is time now that you held these people to account. They are destroying the future of a great British public service. They're destroying one of the best companies and the best group of workers that you've got anywhere in the UK.
Dave, talking about destroying things. Postal workers will be destroying the delivery of Christmas gifts, of presents. We've had small business owners on earlier on today saying that they are going to be shoved to the wall after lockdowns. The postal force are driving small businesses to the wall, and you don't really care, do you? Because this is about getting what you want, and the public, they're just grist to the mill.
You're talking absolute rubbish. What you're saying there is so wrong, because it's our members who defend the service. So, well, I've just explained that if we accept Royal Mail's plans, then we will be accepting the destruction of every Christmas post. We'll be accepting the destruction of daily deliveries, the very thing that you're saying customers want, and we know that customers want. We don't want to be in this position. I mean, surely you must understand the level of sacrifices that our members are making. And this really is over the future of their jobs and the future of the service that we provide and have provided to the public for years and years and years. Royal Mail is responsible, the people at the top of the business, for this dispute. If you think that it's right that we should accept these guys here being sacked when they're replacing them with other workers, not working alongside them, bringing in new workers. If you think that's right for the UK economy, for a company like Royal Mail, then there's something sadly wrong in Britain today.
Well, Dave, on another point, finally, politically, the GMT said to us yesterday that they don't care if Labour get in. They want to damage the Tory party. They want to return to Corbynism. Isn't this just a bunch of unions joining together, you, the Postal Service, and also the Rail Service? This is about a general strike to bring the country to its knees. This is about damaging the Tory government. It's about getting the Tories out of power. It's not about pay, it's about politics.
You're just talking absolute rubbish. Why are you saying things like that when people are... So, look, listen, people are fighting for their very jobs here. They're fighting for a service that people in this country value. How can you be saying what you're saying there? You've got to start listening to what these workers are going through, the experiences they're having day in, day out, and then believe me, you would understand the gravity of the situation that they're facing.
And how much money are these people losing by going on strike?
Well, I guess that they've lost probably about £1,200–1,300 in the strike so far. They're also suffering because it's Christmas. They're also suffering because there's a cost of living crisis. These people are doing this, I repeat it again, they are fighting for their jobs and for the future of Royal Mail. And the people that are running Royal Mail, they do not believe in the service that we provide. What they're all about is appeasing shareholders, and what they're about is, rather than playing to their natural advantage, which is the reality that they deliver to 32 million addresses every day of the week, they want to compete on the lowest possible common denominator. And the country can't keep putting up with that type of practice at the top of businesses, forcing decent people like this, who were only 18 months ago being held as key workers in the UK. We can't keep having those situations and then blaming the workers for being on strike. We want nothing more than to be providing the service to the public, but we need business leaders who actually believe in their own workers.
OK, Dave Ward, thank you for your time this morning, the General Secretary of the CWU. You said you'd accept 9%. I hope the government are listening and we can get Christmas back on track.
After the break, we're going to speak to mother and daughter duo Makita and Andy Oliver about what Christmas dinner is like at their house and why we shouldn't be striving for perfection. More in a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Right, Christmas is just 11 days away, which has shocked and scared me this morning, I can't deny. And there is, of course, always huge pressure, not only to buy the perfect present, but to create the perfect meal and, of course, to have the most perfect, memorable day.
Indeed. But according to the mother-daughter duo, Andy and Maquita Oliver, we shouldn't feel the pressure to be perfect at Christmas, and they join us now to tell us more. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Great to see you. I must confess, Isabel seems to be very much the perfectionist camp, whereas I'm a kind of open the Baileys and get on the air fryer sort of fella.
I just think if that kind of picture perfect thing is an easy thing, then, you know, have at it. For most of us, that's just not what life is like. And I think the pressure to achieve that picture perfect moment is so debilitating for people that we've discovered, you know, there's a whole bunch of research been done by Campo Viejo, actually, who we work with, that says that people are getting depressed about it, people are getting stressed about it, it's making them unhappy. So I'm like, if it makes you unhappy, I think we've been it. If it makes you happy to do the
complain.
air fryer...
Oh, go on, Makita. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you want to do the air fryer, if that makes you happy, if that's your Christmas freedom, then that's good. That's cool. But we like the mess. We're like, embrace the chaos. Yeah. Enjoy all the sort of nuttiness that happens over Christmas, and just make sure it's delicious and you're having fun with your family, because that's what's important, not kind of what other people think about what your Christmas looks like.
Yeah, but I can't have fun and enjoy Christmas if there's mess and chaos. It has to be tidy and neat, and my table has to be really pretty, and the potatoes have to be perfect, and the presents have to be wrapped, not just stuck together any old how. Perfect, ribbon, beautiful calligraphy.
Totally with you.
It's intense.
I'm totally with you. I'm about as uptight as you. Are we using the word calligraphy when we're talking about breakfast, Isabel? No, I'm sorry, darling. We need to. No.
I would say, okay, so I think I'm like you and Mum's like you. And I think it's that thing in the middle, because, I really like things to be clean and tidy as well.
Yes.
But you've got to let a little bit of space for the magic in. And usually that comes with letting go of control and letting a bit of chaos happen.
So when I say chaos, I don't mean dirty, nasty, absolutely awful. I just mean humanity, Isabel, yeah? I'm saying, let's leave room for the human idiosyncrasies, and let's leave room for, if you can't afford a turkey, make a ham. If you can't afford to buy millions of presents and get your calligraphy pen out, babe, then let's just do it with a Sharpie in the best way that you can.
It's official. I've just been called uptight on national television. You called me out. It's true.
Me too.
So I tell her she's uptight all the time. She is quite.
It's a female thing, do you think? Kirsty Allsop, who's famously done that show called Homemade Christmas, and she makes all the baubles herself. She actually tweeted 3 hours ago saying, a quick shout out to all the other women lying here wide awake, suffering with raging Christmas brain. Go easy on yourself for everyone else's sake.
For everyone else's sake, I think, and for your own sake, because that kind of stress is just not necessary. You can do lovely things. I just think that perhaps have a drink a little earlier, Isabel. It's also quite nice thing to do. Have a little morning beverage. Then I start mulling my wine around about midday. Beautiful mulled wine. It's a gentle, lovely thing to ease you through the day. And you're supposed to also be having fun. Yeah. Everybody is supposed to be having fun. And I think sometimes if the perfection thing comes easily to you, then obviously, and it makes you happy, then great. But I just think what happens if you set yourself up like that, something goes wrong and you just go into, people go into a massive panic and they think they've failed and all this, pressure comes to bear. So I think if you're aiming for something, then that's great. Aim for whatever makes you happy. But if you fall off that wagon, that's okay. Don't worry. It's all right. It really is all right.
Good advice. I know I can't follow
the main thing is that you're all together.
I must confess, I always seek solace in the kitchen because you're in control of that, and I'm totally with you. You can, as well as slowly basting the turkey, you can slowly baste yourself, can't you, with a little bit of bait as well?
Yourself, absolutely.
Well, this is the great thing about the mulled wine that Mum makes, because Mum has it's a new plight on her hands to show the country how to mull. Because we believe that so much mulled wine is just really wine heated.
Really not very nice. So you need to spice your wine. So make sure you put cinnamon. You'll like this, Isabel. Cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and star anise into that wine.
Love it.
I use the Gran Reserva Campo Viejo because it's really full-bodied and it's got loads of bottom. But the magic trick is how you sweeten it. Use maple syrup and then also add some port.
Yeah, top tip. Andy Makita Oliver, I thoroughly enjoyed that segment, but I am really stressed now that there's only 11 days to go. I'm going to get my calligraphy pen. I'm going to get
my goodness.
No, I'm with you. Get the calligraphy pen. It obviously brings you joy. And it's your Christmas too.
It does.
It's your Christmas.
As do you. Thank you both.
Thank you both very much. That was fantastic. I don't know about you, but I'm thirsty. I left the show yesterday hungry, and I'm leaving the show today, Thursday.
Look, have a lovely Wednesday. I'll be back bright and early from 6 o'clock tomorrow, joined by Andrew Pearce. And up next,
it's Tom Harwood, and we've got the latest on that breaking story from Mark White about the boat that's capsized in the Channel.
Have a good day.
Good morning, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Some of you waking up to a covering of snow in places. It's a frosty, icy start again, and we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Here's the big picture. Low pressure to the north and to the southwest. This one is trying to introduce milder air, but it's not really succeeding. We stay in the cold air for at least the next couple of days. A couple of weather fronts enhancing the snow showers. Northern Scotland